You were going to school to be a plastic surgeon. Now you're a lawyer. Tell me how.
Well, I would say that it's perhaps my greatest personal failing. I really was all in. I am not the type of person who would pick something up and stop. So I devoted my 100% academic effort, beyond just college. It was high school, everything I had done to angle myself in a position where I would be accepted to a school with a robust pre-med program. Did everything there, everything quote unquote right. Checked all the boxes. Did the EMT program. Worked a little bit at the MREMS Emergency Services Center. Tried to get into labs that would give me some sort of experience, something to beef up that resume. And it was the final hurdle, the MCAT itself, that finally cracked me, which is embarrassing to admit. But I studied, I gave it my best shot, and my score was still quite far off from what I would need to go to a medical school that I would have been proud to attend. So at that point, it was a gut check time. I was working at a neurosurgical center part time, and after speaking with doctors, speaking with various different people in the field, really doing almost an audit of what I wanted my career path to be, I realized that I could do something else and that I wanted to. So it's sort of strange to say, but I gave myself permission to give up on that original dream and pivot to something where I think I'd still be able to find success.
Describe the MCAT for the listener that doesn't realize.
So the MCAT is a comprehensive standardized test. It covers a wide array of topics, mainly science-based. So we're talking biology, molecular biology, and biochemistry, physics, a little bit of math, a lot of different types of chemistry, organic chemistry, and then critical reading and analysis. So I joke with one of my friends who's finished med school, entered his dermatology residency. He's done everything. He's an incredible person. So we always said if he was never any good at the cars part, the critical reading and analysis. So he's like, if we just combine our cars section with his, science stuff, then we would have had
And
a
perfect.
528, a perfect score. But
Yeah.
of course, that's not how it played out.
Gotcha. So, what originally inspired you to be a plastic surgeon? That was the route that you were going towards.
Yes.
What influenced that?
So I still to this day and always have had a deep and abiding passion for all things scientific. I am curious, I'm skeptical, and I find the scientific method of inquiry to be very compelling. Additionally, I had great mentors all throughout my schooling who were very passionate about the sciences. Shout out to Howard York, IB bio teacher. We met in ninth grade.
He's the man.
Excellent. He's the man. That was always part of what I was interested, not only academically but personally. And then the other side was artwork. I have been making artwork since as long as I can remember. Some of my earliest childhood memories were opening Yu-Gi-Oh card packs, putting them out on the table, then having a big Bristol board next to me and just copying all the designs. I was fascinated by how someone could make things so intricate and so visually appealing. So, in my mind, fusing those two is a career path, plastic surgery. You
Yeah.
take the sciencey stuff, take the art stuff, put them together. That's where you're at.
Did you have an idea? I mean, it's. I've learned there's a lot of aspects to plastic surgery. Did you have one that you were shooting for that they had in mind? Was it going to be facial or reconstructive?
Probably reconstructive,
Yeah.
simply because I think the challenge is both interesting and rewarding. I think when you hear plastic surgery, I think there's perhaps a slight negative bias toward a vanity project or what have you. And to be clear, I see nothing wrong with that. I think it's your body. It should look how you want it to. But with the reconstructive element, there's a mental health component that I find extremely compelling. If you have a severe injury or some other such thing that causes you to look in a way that is uncomfortable to you. I think a reconstructive plastic surgeon can not only use their skill and talent to accomplish that goal, but that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. You're really going to
Yeah.
see a huge positive impact on multiple fronts.
I know at least two people, they went to the same plastic surgeon. One was in like a motor vehicle accident, and they just reconstructed to make her back as close from previous injury.
Mm.
And then if you have any type of like cyst or anything too close to the eye, you have to go to a specialist. You can't just go to a dermatologist. So just to remove stuff like that, you're technically going to a plastic surgeon,
Yeah.
even if you're just going to have a small removal.
Yeah.
And when they do it right, you can never tell that it was there.
Mhm.
So pretty neat. So tell me about Middlebury College in Vermont and how you ended up there from Florida.
So I have a deep and abiding love for Middlebury College. I as many like-minded individuals as I can talk to about the school, I frankly I evangelize because they have maintained the true liberal arts experience. So what do I mean by that? They are interested in creating a thinker rather than, I guess you could say, a drone or a worker bee, that kind of thing. Their curriculum is extremely broad and they let you study whatever you want without limits. You are given so much freedom that I knew people who majored in something called independent scholarship. They created their own by fusing different disciplines together.
Wow.
So I not only do I love the school, not only do I love what it stands for and sort of the people and academics it produces, but the location is perfect. Rural Vermont is perhaps the best place to study, especially for someone like me who I can't ski to this day. Well, maybe I shouldn't say can't. I've never even attempted it,
Neither have I. Yeah.
but it's stunningly beautiful. And in when school is in session, it's fall, big chunk of winter, and then the spring. And since most of it is bitter, bitter cold, you're forced to just stay inside and study. So that's what I did for the the vast majority of the 4 years.
Describe, you dual majored in biology and art.
Yes.
I've bragged about you. Most people question how those two get paired up. Break down how you decided on those two.
Well, that's another huge, huge pro to a place like Middlebury. Other schools that I had applied to and then spoken with admissions counselors, we had reached an impasse where I went in knowing that I wanted to study both at the most extreme level, major in both, take them all the way down to their conclusion. And some other programs that I was interested in, they once you declare pre-med, they control your schedule. And there was no doing that.
No freedom. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they have a different philosophy on how deep you need to go with the other stuff to be prepared for medical school. And truly, I'm in no position to opine as to whether that's good or not because I didn't go. And hey, maybe I'm the poster child for the opposite. Maybe I'm the reason why they shouldn't let people do that. Anyway, I had no limits. They said you should study whatever you want to study. And if you can handle that course load, then handle that course load. So I did. I did the entire curriculum for biology, took it all the way through. And I did the exact same for studio art.
Wow. Did anyone at the college have those two majors too?
I should have. It's extremely embarrassing. I should have asked. I didn't.
Okay.
I
The assumption's
I
not.
not in my year. There was someone who did something slightly different. There's a twist on the bio major called molecular biology and biochemistry. Someone did that and studio art a few years before me,
Yeah.
I think.
Very similar. But I mean, you continue to rave about Middlebury. Tell me a little bit about your experience there. You were there 4 years. Did you stay during the summer or did you come home?
I stayed during one summer, and then I had they helped me find far-flung adventures for the remaining summers. I mean, that first summer I stayed was my sophomore year. We did something called the STEM Innovation Program, where it was a group of students that all applied for this role, and we got a we got a budget. We got 3 incredible mentors in one was a math and computer science professor, one was a physics professor, one was a biology professor, who let us imagine our wildest projects, give us a budget, guide us down the right steps, and over the course of one J term and then a summer. So I'll tell you what J term is. Over that J term and then the summer, we took it from an idea to a reality. We actually made essentially an ethanol sniffer, so that if you took it out to campus parties and someone told you, oh, they made a mixed drink, you had no idea what was in it, we could sniff it and see its alcohol content. And then that paired up with an app that we built as a team that could coordinate licensed, I guess you could call them counselors or essentially assistants. And if you ever felt uncomfortable at a party, or you were out somewhere in town, you could essentially ping this app called Nightcap, and it would notify our counselors at this center, and someone would come physically find you and take you out of whatever dangerous situation you felt you were in and return you where you wanted to go. So that was our idea, to sort of increase campus safety.
Wow.
So I'm sorry for going far afield, but when I mentioned that the beginning phase of that happened during J term, another thing that I love about the school is that it's broken up into 2 larger semesters, a fall and a spring. And then for the month of January, J term, you take 1 class. That 1 class could truly be anything. So my 1 class my sophomore year was the STEM innovation program, because we were working together to build that out. But I took stem cell biology another year. It was extremely in-depth just in that one granular aspect of biology.
That's 4 weeks, right?
4 weeks.
Wow.
They had another course which I woefully didn't get a chance to take, called Japanese boat building, where a boat builder trained in this specific traditional art form came in, and they built a boat every year, and the culmination of the course was to launch it.
Wow.
My
4
first,
weeks.
yes, my first J term was the national EMT certification course, compressed for the people who wanted to take it. And when we finished that course, we sat for the national exam and the practical exam and became EMTs. I mean,
Wow.
the educational opportunities afforded to me and to my friends, unmatched in my opinion. This is the most resounding, full-throated endorsement of a liberal arts path possible. If you're of college age and you're thinking about where you want to go, whether it be a large research institution or a state school, anything like that, take a look at the liberal arts colleges. Just
Consider it.
consider it, humor yourself. It's a much different way. You know, we've become an era of specialists. We're told to specialize, pick a niche. And I don't disagree, but college is perhaps too early to do that. And I think I might be a prime example of that, because if you get pigeonholed early, you might be unfulfilled later on.
Yeah. You continue to learn and grow.
Yes.
I mean, look how many careers I've considered and tried and, continue to move and evolve from.
Absolutely.
That's just part of life, right? So I was curious. I've never lived anywhere but Florida. What was it like going from South Florida to Vermont?
Huge change. I mean, of course, you got to start with the climate. The first winter, I seriously considered transferring, because when I was going through the EMT course, we were meant to do some 12-hour shifts just
Clinicals.
to get some time under our belt, and really, you need it just to register for the exam. So I didn't have a car. It was my first year. I didn't know anyone with a car, and it was pretty early on. So I remember my first 6 to 6, I had to walk to the station. In my mind, it's a mile and a bit, not terrible. Well, I put on my warmest clothes, put on my duck boots, and I head out. And I say to myself, I'm giving myself an hour to get there, because I don't know what awaits me in the New England wilderness. Well, the first step out of the tell, my freshman dorm, my foot goes completely under the snow, and I haven't yet hit the ground. So I put a little bit more weight on my foot, it goes deeper. A little bit more weight, it goes deeper. A little bit more weight goes deeper. At this point, my knee is completely enveloped in powdery snow. Very difficult to move in because it's such a thick layer. So I finally put all my weight on that foot and I drop down, and halfway up my thigh, it's just a pure white. And each successive step I take, it's that constant depth all the way to MREMS.
And you made it.
And I made it.
And that was to a fire station, you said? You
That
said
was
station.
Yeah. So MREMS, it was I guess a whole big conglomeration of first response came out of there.
Gotcha.
I can't, it's as embarrassing as it sounds, I can't remember if fire was encapsulated in that, but I think it was.
Yeah. States and especially cities can do all sorts of stuff. So I've never been to Vermont. So I really couldn't tell you.
But it was harrowing moving through that much snow. I had never seen that much snow in my entire life. And coming from a place that's warm 365, it was a bit of a shock.
I know you had eclectic roommates
Yes.
throughout your time. Tell me a little bit about some of them, just how diverse all of you were. Well, I don't know, was there 4 of you? I don't know how many people, but
So it changed every year. So my very first year was just me and my freshman year roommate. Great guy, very interesting. His name's Brendan. He and I got along very, very well from the very beginning. A lot of very similar interests. What made that living arrangement so unique was that we lived in these dilapidated freshman dorms that are almost no longer used for that purpose. They're rebuilding a new facility. They're like barracks, because when both Brendan and I were laying down, if we had outstretched our arms, we could hold hands in the middle of our room. I mean, it was teensy tiny. Then next year, we had a little bit nicer living arrangement, a suite with a couple other guys, which was also great. Brendan and I stayed in the double because we liked living together so much. And then as things changed, our friend groups changed, and I had met some of my friends who I'm extremely close with to this day. So the dermatologist that I spoke about before, and I have a friend who's a software engineer. I have a friend who finished up his master's in public health and does all kinds of jobs. He's super into fitness. He's a boxing coach. And I have another friend who just took an extremely interesting job. I don't want to
spoil it.
I don't want to blow up his whole.
Sure.
I'm not sure what I can say about his job, so I'll just tell you he's worked in a lot of different fields, and he got his MBA, and through that MBA program, he was able to really land something that he really wanted. So they truly are from all over the world. It's another thing that I love about the school. It had this international draw, but since there's 2,500 kids, everyone knew each other. So living with all of them exposed me to a substantial amount of, I guess you could say, world cultures. I got to live very closely with people who practice different faiths, with people who had different culinary cultures, with people who had much different home life, and it was amazing. I cherish that time because that really allows oneself to open their eyes and see that these differences, respecting other people is baseline. But once you see how they work and see how it informs who they are, the baseline respect transforms and it becomes a curiosity, and you want to learn more and learn how those values can be incorporated in your own life, even if you come from places that are vastly different.
Yeah, and you get to grow.
Absolutely.
And that's something I kind of regret. The more I've learned about schools like this, I really wish that I, pursued one. I don't know if people would get that same experience at massive colleges of 20,000, 30,000 students. And then the fact that you guys are all successful in such crazy different, it's not like everyone just went medical or art or vice versa. Um, that's something I want to kind of highlight. I've heard some stories about these people, and it's just cool that you've each found your own thing, and that one school can prosper such radically different career paths. It's pretty neat. I know you studied abroad.
Hmm.
I think you've done a couple programs I'm going to ask you about, but I know you studied abroad in college in Italy.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
So that was quite different. It's different from the typical study abroad program. So I was introduced to the Digital Stone Project, that's the name of the artist residency, through my senior thesis advisor. And when we'd worked together, he was a sculptor. He is a sculptor by trade. And my sculptural practice was far more limited. I was much more concentrated in painting and 2D art forms, essentially. And we talked about different opportunities that were available in the art world. And this came up as a residency that he attended and that he essentially could recruit for. So he floated the idea, and the application process involved, writing an artist statement, putting together a resume that was specific to the arts, and developing essentially a mock-up of what we wanted to make, because the foundational novelty of the Digital Stone Project is that they have unique 7-axis milling machines that are designed to carve marble. And this was the only studio that was using technology like this. So I learned how to use Blender, a 3D modeling software, to build out sort of the rough shape of what I'd want my sculpture to look like. And once I was accepted, they upload this mock-up to the 7-axis machine. And it can rough hew out whatever 3D model you put into it,
Just to get you started,
just to get you started.
and then the rest by hand.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Wow.
So it is, the project's still going on, and what's so cool about it is that it allows the production rate of marble sculptures to drastically increase. That's the major setback, and at least to me, the major setback in all art forms. The once you reach the level of technical skill, that time investment can still be daunting. I mean, I love painting. I paint it practically every day. I've gotten fairly quick, but even if you are an unbelievably talented sculptor, a subtractive process rather than an additive one. So if you're building with clay, it's malleable, quick. You can put stuff on quick. When you're chiseling something out, if you make a mistake, you're done. So when you have something that can give you a rough draft that you then perfect, I think that's perfect for the medium.
And then as an artist yourself, you don't see that as like a cheating, right? It's really just an enhancement of
I don't view it that way.
creating the art, right?
I think I can see the argument for that,
Yeah.
sure, but at least in the application that we were using, the artists who were invited to the residency were still making, it was all original work. So I just happened to build mine out in Blender digitally. But other artists made their sculpture out of clay or out of styrofoam or out of some other such material, and then used a 3D scanner to send it to the 7-axis machine.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I was just misinterpreting. You could have created this entire thing by hand, and then you could just enlarge it by scale to make it, like if you made it in the size of your hand, but you wanted the actual piece to be 5 feet tall or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you could just scale it
absolutely.
up. So incredibly
Absolutely.
cool. Very, very neat tool. I believe you worked in a special quarry, and you've told me about it before,
Yes.
but describe what that is, where you were, and that story.
So we were deep in the Apuan Alps in a small little town called Gromalazzo. Beautiful place. Highly encourage everyone to visit. When we took a tour, we drove up the Alps to see where the stone we would be using was quarried. We were told a very interesting story. There, during the Renaissance, there was such a demand for this specific type of marble that artists themselves would go with the I guess scouting parties to find the best sources of stone. And the most persnickety of all artists with their material was Michelangelo. So he led these expeditions and he founded the quarry and eventually, once you come down the slope, the studio that we were working in, because he liked this specific site's marble. And he would only work on what he could get his hands on. Now, there are great stories about how he had to make do at earlier points in his career and even at later points. While I was in Italy, the only thing I did while in the studio was I had my headphones in and I was listening to an audiobook version of a book called The Agony and the Ecstasy. It's a slightly dramatized version of his life story. Highly recommend it. Unbelievable book. Definitely the Audible, though, because it's quite long.
Pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
So, describe studying and living in Italy and how it inspired what you've worked on since.
It was transformative in the sense that it was the first and only time in my life where 100% of every day was dedicated to making art. So I had the opportunity to live as a working artist, albeit in a condensed time frame. But it truly was my day job. I lived 5-minute walk from the studio, which was all outdoors. I would wake up, have breakfast with everyone. We'd all go down to the studio together, work. We'd all have lunch together, come back up. We did a lot of different extracurricular activities. We went to Lucca, which is a small little town. Beautiful place. If you're in Italy, you should try and go there. We went to Florence, went to the Academy, the Uffizi, to see these great works that were, produced before we had access to this type of technology. So as the biggest eye-opener was living and working in Italy with this specific technology, I was able to make a marble sculpture in a month. I have a completely new appreciation for the fact that the pieces you see in Rome, if you go to Borghese, see a Bernini, or you go to the Uffizi, or you go to the Academy and see Michelangelo stuff, why this would take years if it's a hammer and chisel in one person. I view those works more as miracles than as artworks at this point. I mean, I have dedicated a substantial amount of time to learning how to make artwork. I am unaware of how it was possible for them to do that, even though I understand technically how they did it and then tried to get in that headspace. They are genuine miracles. They're incredible.
Remarkable. I've been to Italy once. I was only in Rome. Describe the best you can how art is viewed and valued differently in Italy compared to the United States.
Difficult question to answer, but I will tell you that art is much more of a foundational component, I guess you could say, because there is an element of craft in everything that is still in existence there. So, an example, in Gromalazzo, there's not a lot going on. It's a very small town with a very small permanent residence. But there are beautiful artworks just out for public enjoyment, and the buildings themselves are antique and gorgeous. I think that here we have a healthy preference for the contemporary. What I mean by that is we're the new world, so we try to do things differently. Now, that is, we have a substantial architectural history that is literally borrowing from that, a neoclassical style. But I think that in most respects, artwork here is more utilitarian. I think we interact with art in an equal volume, because I think every day everybody is consuming some form of art. If you go on Instagram or whatever, even TikTok videos, someone has produced that for you. So you're engaging in it. When I was there, granted, the entire point was to look at good art, whatever that means. It just felt like there was more of that good art.
Yeah, more formal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here it's different. It's less good.
Yeah, that's a cool way that you described it because I didn't consider digital stuff as much. I mean, I should have, but I was thinking how their culture's been rooted and it's definitely changed and evolved, but it's been pretty, you know, Italy's Italy, but the United States is such a melting pot
Mhm.
that that's how I was thinking about it, right? Because you think of the classical works, the US doesn't necessarily have classical in the same essence of, oh, this piece is 1,200 years old and it's sat here the entire time, you know? So that's how I was kind of thinking about that, but pretty wild. Did you have any favorite parts of Italy?
Luca for sure. It's surrounded by this giant border wall, which was built, pre-unification, way before the unification of Italy. And now it's, pedestrian path and it's quaint, but it was cool to be up on, the battlements and kind of see how that was. So I love it there. My favorite place in the world is Florence. It is my favorite city, my favorite place, best food, best art, in my opinion. Florence is number one.
I had another idea where that could be. I believe you've done other international programs.
Mhm.
Tell me about those too.
So for a long time, the top of my list, it's still battling with Florence is Japan.
That's
I
my
love
thought.
Japan. I had a fantastic opportunity to go to Okinawa, to the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, to participate in a biophysics sort of consortium with students from all over the world. And that is a truly magnificent place. Okinawa is it's kind of like a mountainous Florida. It is beautiful there, and it's just it is truly a must visit. And specifically, you got to go to the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. It looks like something Tony Stark would have built. I mean, it looks like it's from 100 years in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to go. So tell me how Japanese culture and your experience in Japan has influenced your art.
So that I wouldn't even come close to saying that I'm an expert or even particularly knowledgeable in the true uh, nuances and eccentricities of Japanese culture. But I think a lot of Americans my age, 28, feel strongly connected to Japanese cultural media. And I'm not sure why. Probably because of Saturday morning cartoons, quite honestly. But I have been hopelessly obsessed with the way that their media tells stories and presents ideas in a visual medium. I think that it's just wildly compelling.
I think it's their TV and their video games
Mhm.
because people, I mean, I guess a lot older than us had no video games. and then the early stuff was just too simple, like Atari or Pong. But like once you start getting to the 80s and 90s, Japan was the one were the ones that were crushing with all the game systems and all the early stuff, and they're still killing it with like Nintendo and Sony's Japanese and stuff. So I think that's really carried the influence, and that's people have grown with that.
Mhm.
My dad, he didn't have the opportunity to play, you know, Street Fighter,
Mhm.
or something like that. But even then, old race car type stuff, they've always had like a rich history. Speed Racer is like a really old show that my dad grew up on, so I think it's just been around a long time.
Mhm.
Um, what was your favorite place? Well, I guess you've already answered it. It was Florence,
Mhm.
and then Okinawa in Japan. Um, Outside of those two places, where would you like to go to next?
I I honestly, I guess there are more places in Europe I'd like to see. I'd love to see England, especially because of the shared heritage between the US and England. I'd like to kind of see what we left behind. But additionally, there is a lot. I feel like I've been very fortunate. I've kind of hit the highlights so far. So I'd like to explore a little more and travel. Honestly, follow in your footsteps. You kind of expanded my horizons on that front. I know you and your friends took quite the odyssey.
Sabbatical, yeah.
Yeah, so that I'm more interested in that now. I want to dig a little deeper and try and go off the beaten path. I'd pretty much be game for anything.
Yeah.
If I could throw a dart and where I'd hope it'd land, I'd love to see Central and South America. I'd love to go to Mexico. I'd really like to kind of explore in and around those parts. And
Yeah.
then Patagonia, because I'd want to go on an adventure, do some hiking.
That'd be awesome. So for the people listening, um, after college, my gift to myself was to go to the Philippines and Indonesia. And I was lucky enough, I know you know the story that one of my best friends is from the Philippines, moved here as a kid, and he'd only been back a couple times. And for years, we're just like, you're gonna go back, we're gonna go with you. And it was gonna be more of a guy's trip. But thankfully, we were able to stay with his family that still lives there, and we were able to have this massive trip on a pretty tight budget as college kids. And he was about to go to med school, so I was celebrating graduation. He was kind of just taking a break. Pretty nuts. So I was going to ask you how important traveling abroad is, in your opinion.
I think it's, if it's feasible, critical. And I think it's more feasible for more people. There is no good reason to go overboard and put yourself into a financial problem. But it is critical because there is no better way to learn and to truly develop an understanding of outside perspectives. But the God's honest truth is, my favorite day out of all these trips is landing back on American soil. Because not to sound like a I don't know, dyed in the wool nationalist, but there is truly something special and exceptional about this country and the way that we live our lives here. And that is, this is the only place I want to be. I am very fortunate. I love that the fact that I have seen other places and experienced them. Traveling abroad gives you a reference point to understand why I'm proud to be an American.
Yeah. And your gratitude to where you're from, because other people are going to feel the same, whether any other country, not even to pick one. Um, I think it's important because it really opened my eyes that I was graduating. I was just like 22, typical age to graduate college, 4 year. Um, I'd never left the country before, so very eye opening of the Western ideologies that have transcended where I'm from. So that was eye opening, and then just learning culture. I think Americans don't realize how easy it is for Europe because a couple hour flight in Europe, you could be in drastically different countries,
Hmm.
and like a couple hour flight, I'm like 3 states away. You know what I mean? Or if I'm driving, so in Europe, you could take a train, and in 4 hours, you could be in several other countries. And driving, we don't have very good train systems, but driving 4 hours, I barely get to Jacksonville.
Hmm.
And I don't even know if you get to Jacksonville in South
No,
Florida.
I think so. 3 and a bit. I'm in Orlando from here,
Yeah, so
so
it's gonna
I'm
take
I'm
you,
halfway done.
yeah, 7 hours to escape the state of Florida. So that's something that I feel like a lot more people should experience. Um, After Middlebury, you attended the University of Miami Law School. Besides living in South Florida, what drew you to UM?
So I for my love for Middlebury and UM is about equal. So it's another pitch. If you're looking at law school, taking the LSAT, throw UM on the list. Why? Their course catalog is extremely broad, kind of similar to Middlebury in that way. And once you're finished with the required aspects of your first year, you get to branch out. So 2 and 3L year is where you have broad control over your schedule. So I only experienced 2 and 3L year at UM because I transferred in. So from day one, I had just as deep as you want to go into any subject. So I had art law, learned about, disputes and estate planning, all that kind of thing from the aspect of fine art. I had music law, learned about the music business, how contracts in that business work, how to represent artists and entertainers. I had a course called litigation skills, which, it sounds somewhat benign, but it's 6 credits as compared to, other courses, which are only 4 or 3 credits. And then there's some 1 and 2 credit courses. It's 6 credits because each week, 3 sections of the class met. So we would have our pretrial section where we would learn the legal foundational concepts of, admitting or not admitting certain pieces of evidence, or voir dire, picking a jury, or any number of things, every aspect of running a trial. So there was that aspect. Then we had the trial component, which was once a week. For me, it was in the evenings. It was another big chunk of time, 3 hours, where we would individually, in front of practicing attorneys and judges, try out different aspects of a trial. We would have to show them that we understood the concept of how to admit certain pieces of evidence, and we'd show it to them by doing it. We would live the experience. And then there was a midway point bench trial in front of, licensed attorneys and judges, where we basically had a dry run of putting on an entire trial. And our final exam was you and a partner put on a trial. And we went, we were, me and Jonathan Garcia, my co-counsel, were defending our fictitious plaintiff, or excuse me, our fictitious defendant. And on the plaintiff side, there's plaintiff's attorneys,
Other students?
other students, with a real judge, a real bailiff in the Miami-Dade courthouse,
Well,
with a real jury of high school kids, I believe.
okay. I was gonna ask if the jury knew that this was a,
Yeah, they knew it was a put on.
okay, but
But
still,
we had witnesses. We had all different types of evidence. We had a booklet this thick of different things we had to introduce in the trial. And it went all the way to a verdict where the jury made a decision on who was going to win. And then we
wow.
had this whole big feedback. It was truly exceptional. One of the highlights of my time in law school. And many classes were like that, where we were expected to demonstrate our understanding of the material through a practical experience alongside more traditional exams. Additionally, the school had legal scholarship from all walks of life, all different angles. I wanted to learn more about my own, my own tradition. So I took a course in Talmudic law, which essentially had us analyzing the Torah, the Talmud, and other various writings in a contemporary lens and comparative to American jurisprudence. It's a school that is unafraid to explore any and everything.
The necessities, right,
Yeah,
of what's necessary to understand law.
it's yes, it's a great place to study, not
Well,
just for the school itself, but quite frankly, where it's located.
what was your favorite course that you took? I know you listed a lot, but
Mm.
did you have one that stuck with you?
Lit skills is up there. Art law is up there. Hmm. If I had to choose, what really stand? I mean, I love them all. There was one short course. So a short course, single credit, very intensive. You do the whole thing start to finish in 1 week. The name of the class was High Net Worth Divorce. And it was so incredibly fun because an attorney, a alum, came down from New York to teach us how family law works when the pile of stuff that's being fought over is quite large. And every aspect was taught through a practical examination of different cases that went to court that this attorney worked on. It was awesome.
Wow.
Very interesting.
So those were real cases that you guys
Yeah.
got to talk about. And then once a case comes to a close, they're able to be talked about, or is there any type of
So as long as they're publicly filed in a court and there is no essential restriction placed on them by a judge, yeah, then they're out there. Anyone can look at any case. If you go on whatever county you live in, you go on the clerk of court's website, you should look up your name first and
Yeah.
look up anyone's name. You
Look
could
stuff
see
up?
what's up there. It's
Wow.
public.
Yeah. Because you knew I was a firefighter, and the listeners will start to realize I was a firefighter. Medical stuff's drastically different between HIPAA laws and those violations. And there's reasons that, so a lot of people have asked, this is like a common question of, would firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, would they ever wear um, the cameras kind of like law enforcement?
Mhm.
And because of the nature of what we have to do, you can't do that because you would just be violating people's rights every
Mhm.
second of basically every call.
Mhm.
So it's interesting. So when you teach people, a lot of times you would have facts that are real, but then other things have to be made up. And oftentimes they're not important facts. But it's pretty wild that you get to study, unfortunately, real divorces and how estates are split up and stuff like that. So pretty wild.
Mhm.
Um, you did something pretty cool. You scored an art studio while in law school, I believe.
Mhm.
Describe how that happened and tell me about the studio.
So I was extremely fortunate. I'm trying to remember how exactly I got in touch with Zero Empty Spaces. They're still alive and kicking. They have an incredible mission statement. Essentially, their goal is to take disused or underused commercial space, repurpose it, and lease it out to artists at a very competitive rate. Just so that one, the space gets used, two, it's used for a productive purpose, and three, it beautifies the neighborhood that these spaces are in. And maybe it was even through Instagram or something. I somehow was connected with these.
Program.
Yeah, but it was just two guys at the time.
I thought it was in the school. It had nothing to do with UM.
Nothing to do with UM.
Oh, I had no idea.
Nothing to do with UM. Now I definitely hounded some people at UM to see if that were possible. But when I pulled on those threads, it never fully materialized. But I had space with Zero Empty Spaces for a while, loved working with them. And then I eventually set up a studio in the corner of my room in my apartment.
That's
And
awesome.
then, anytime I talk about myself in the studio these days, I am in the corner of my room
Yeah, which is
as of right now.
very, common. Uh, I had no idea. I didn't know that entire program. They're still going on.
Yeah.
And is it local to Miami?
It's in it's expanded enormously. I was about to say it's in South Florida, Southeast Florida, but I don't think that's true anymore. I think they're all over the state at this point.
Wow, that's awesome. Super neat. So you went to a small liberal arts school in Vermont, and then you ended up at University of Miami. So I looked them both up. Middlebury had less than 3,000 students, and UM has almost 20,000. describe how different the experience is.
Okay. So the twist I would put on that is that since I was siloed in the law school, my experience with the student body was truly, truncated down just to the pretty much just the law students.
Yeah, minuscule.
So it felt very similar because I felt like I knew mostly everyone, just the same as Middlebury. It felt very similar, honestly, to Middlebury. However, where you feel the big differences is the campus environment and then the greater neighborhood. So we didn't have name brand, restaurants at at the dining hall at Middlebury. It was just Middlebury dining, which I loved. At UM, they had, national chains that were present in the dining halls. The facilities, I mean, it was the first time where I feel like, wow, I'm at a stereotypical college experience, which I think was funny because, it was for graduate school. But by virtue of where I had to park to get to the law school, I would walk through hordes of undergrads going to Starbucks, all this kind of stuff, and that's where it felt wildly different. Like, wow, I get to say that I've seen sort of both sides because, yeah, you feel that 20,000 because you see strangers every single day. At Middlebury, I saw strangers for 3 months, and then I started to know kind of everyone who was there.
Yeah, pretty wild. So, did you have a favorite professor in law school?
A few, a few. There, it's impossible to pick favorites because there's just different flavors, I guess you could say. But I can tell you that from every professor that I've had, whether my own subjective, wherever my own subjective ranking of them lies, uh, I've learned something. But if I had to pick one, I know you want the one. Stephen Urice. Stephen Urice, please look him up. Extremely interesting. He was my art law professor. Not only that, incredible mentor and friend. He advised my my 3L research project, which was a deep dive academic paper into copyright and artificial intelligence, which I guess is the hot topic of the day. So we were a little early on that, I guess you could say. Not to toot my own horn, but it's an idea that we had, and we were like, okay, well, look at these image generation software. Like, we got to write something about this. So we worked together, and he advised my capstone project that in my very last semester of law school, that was one of my classes. So we would meet to discuss how to develop this into an academic scholarly paper, and that's kind of what the final product was.
That's awesome. So, you might have told me that a while ago. I might have forgotten, to be honest with you, but I had a slew of questions. That's what we're going to talk about in a sec. With those papers, how does that better law and everything that you work towards? Those are published? Are those in possibly textbooks now? Or does that help laws get written? Tell me more about that.
All of the above. So the way that the law develops and matures as new technology or new issues arise is that there are sort of many lanes in which that can happen. So published papers in scholarly journals like law reviews, that's one place. That's where new and exciting ideas are planted, can germinate and grow into all sorts of things. So a bill is proposed based on an idea that someone had put together. In Florida, we have something called a enhanced life estate deed, which is also known as a ladybird deed. That started off as a concept that a professor was talking about. That then people were like, "Oh, this seems like something we should have as an estate planning tool." It became, it was presented to the Florida, you know, House of Representatives, voted on, blah blah blah, became a law. So that is one way that the law develops and changes. Other ways are through court opinions, which law students do have some agency over, insofar as whether a track that people go through in law school is they can clerk for a judge. And clerks generally help the judiciary write opinions. And opinions are interpretations and applications of already written laws. It gives color to the black and white text and lets us understand how the letter of the law is going to be applied. So that can change in important and substantial ways what laws mean. So, what I love so much about the practice of law and the field is that it's applied philosophy, truly. It is how we think things should be and a way to set benefits and punishments to encourage or discourage certain behaviors that are meant to be good for the general public.
Yeah, boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah, like my dad has said it eloquently that freedom is a sense of responsibilities. I feel like that's a cool way to think of it because people think that or they assume that freedom's just everything's wild, right? But there's responsibilities because if people just act freely, they're going to act in their benefit, not the benefit of you, and that's where law comes in. So you're now a lawyer. We're not going to talk about the bar. I'm sure that was challenging, but tell me what you currently practice and its application, and then I'll ask you questions about uh, what you're doing in that field.
So now I'm in estate planning, which is the practice of financial, mainly financial, but it's sort of life planning, not only for now but for the end stages of putting together trusts, wills, uh, you know, essentially facilitating the transfer of material and immaterial assets from one generation to the next. So, in that same vein, we also handle probate, which is the legal process by which inheritance occurs if beneficiaries are improperly or not at all named to certain assets. You die with something only in your name, and it needs to find its new legal owner. It's the probate process. And we also handle matters involving asset protection. So, what do I mean when I say that? Let's say someone has a closely held family business, or they're starting a new venture and they want to structure their company in a way that silos the risk of that venture off from their own personal assets or other things they got going on. They would come to us for advice on that.
Pretty neat. So, did you pick this, or did you kind of fall into that?
Half and half. I It's not what I thought I would do, and it's not what I initially did. So I have bounced around and I've tried a few different things. So I did uh, securities regulations, M&A. I've done corporate litigation, and then I found this through my mom, who is also an attorney and has been practicing in this area for decades. And although it's not something that I originally sort of established as an end goal, I found that it suits my personality a lot more because it's much more client facing. And I very much like to know who I'm working with, who I'm working for. And I want to know them on a personal level because it helps us build an estate plan that's not just going to work for today, but it's going to work many years down the line. And then we have that relationship where we can have it be as fulsome as possible and include everything that someone would need.
And ultimately, it's for them because
Yeah,
they're not very cookie cutter. You know,
not at all.
I
I
don't
mean,
think they can ever be cookie cutter. So you really have to know the person you're trying to help.
absolutely.
So you started to talk about it before. Describe what litigation law is, and then describe how it's implemented.
Sure. So when you hear about the different types of legal practice, I think it's helpful just as a foundation there are two broad categories. There's the transactional, which is what I'm in now, which is structuring deals and real estate closings and selling things and stock that whole world. That's the transactional world. When you cross over that line, we're now in argument world. We're now in a world of us and them and conflict, and it's constant. It's headbutting, it's jockeying for position, it's explaining yourself in through oral advocacy and written advocacy, and it can be extremely rewarding, extremely fun. There are certain downsides. It's not for everyone. I can confidently tell you it wasn't for me. I gave it 110%. It just was not good
Taxing.
for me.
Yeah.
Other people, I think it can work both ways. So for other people, that environment gave them energy, gave them enthusiasm, gave them a drive to keep going. I was on the complete other end of the spectrum. It was extremely draining. I felt completely spent by the end of my day, and it just wasn't for me. And I think a lot of people think that that is what being a lawyer is, because it is going to trial and it is picking a jury, but that only happens. You only really get to do that as a young lawyer if you become a public defender or a prosecutor. And those are two excellent paths. Highly encourage going down that road so you get some trial experience if that's what you want to do. Because you go in the corporate world, it's rare that those cases even get in front of a judge and a jury. You know, you'll be working with a judge constantly, but to get it to a trial, rare.
Pretty tough. So, is there a specialization or a field in law that you want to work towards?
Excellent question. The most honest answer is no. I still am excited by everything, and I wouldn't want to close myself off. That being said, I love what I do now. I have no desire to leave the firm that I'm at. I really enjoy the day to day, and quite honestly, I view it. I view my current career goal in the following structure. I want to expand the types of services that my firm is able to offer to our clients, but still in that same lane. I still want to stay the subject matter expert and just build our repertoire out so that we can offer more complex solutions when they are required. More sophisticated planning, so to speak.
Describe, you could do it broadly, but describe like an example of cases you're working on. Not right this second, but that you've done in the past or that your firm takes on.
Sure. So it's quite varied. So on one end, we could have a family that really just wants to protect a family home, some modest cash assets, depending on how they want their beneficiaries to inherit these things. We could use, for example, something we talked about earlier, a ladybird deed to help them avoid probate, which can be very taxing, expensive, emotionally exhausting, and time consuming. Um, drafting up a will, of course, that isn't my favorite way to do things, but it's a good thing to have in place. To everyone listening, a will does not avoid probate. It's your ticket to the probate process. It tells a judge how you want your assets to be probated. If you have a will thinking you're going to avoid probate, you are not. So in that case, we would use something like a revocable living trust, something that's modifiable, amendable. It's a vault that you can put your things in, where you design the key, you define who gets access to certain things at certain times, you have control over it during the course of your life. It's malleable.
That's a living document, right?
Yes, a
Yeah.
revocable living trust. It's something that we can modify. So that's one side. That's sort of our foundation. As your portfolio of assets increases you run into different issues, and the solution to these problems comes a little bit more sophisticated. Something that comes to mind is we create irrevocable life insurance trusts, ILITs, that hold life insurance payouts to keep them separate from someone's personal estate. That's sort of one strategy that we use. But really, there are as many types of trusts as you could concoct in your head. There are as many as the day is long. And just to your earlier point, it's what I like so much about it is that nothing is cookie cutter. We have these conversations with our clients when they tell us what they need. That kind of guides my hand, and I present to them a plan that suits those specific needs.
Yeah, it's creative, what it
Yes.
sounds like, right?
Yes.
So, something you started to talk about earlier, and I've been waiting to talk about it. Tell me more about patent law and how do patents work?
Okay. Excellent question. That was so at there's a patent law course. And what was cool about it was it wasn't so much the foundational concepts of what patent law is, but we drafted our own patents and learned the practical practice of patent law. So, what is a patent? A patent is ownership over a novel, es- essentially idea. It's abstract as it could come. So if you want to see what people own in insofar as patents go on Google Patents or another patent searching site, or you could go to the USPTO and you can see a list of claims. Now, on each patent, those lists of claims is what they own. Whoever owns the patent, they own the claims. All the other stuff is to provide context to those claims. So taking one step back, the ability to do this, to own intellectual property, comes from one sentence in the Constitution. The reason it was in there is because the founders wanted to encourage invention and useful, essentially, manufacturing. In order to do this, they gave us the ability to protect monetizable ideas.
Did other countries have that before us?
Excellent question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
I
know
don't
either.
think so.
Okay. 'Cause that's a very unique. I didn't realize it was that specific.
The entire So the USPTO has the MPEP, which is a manual of all of the process and like basically how this field works. And all of it, not just the MPEP, but court cases and legal stuff, everything comes from one sentence in the Constitution.
So tell me what patents protect.
Okay. So we think back to, again, that one line in the Constitution. It's called the Intellectual Property Clause. Don't quote me on that, but definitely search it up. It's one sentence and it says, we grant the power to protect an inventor's, useful thoughts, drawings, and inventions, something like that. So essentially what they are for is so that the inventor retains a right over that thing, that novel thing that is useful. And through securing an ownership over that novelty, it gives people an incentive to create new and exciting things because they can engage in mercantile capitalism.
Yeah, they can own it.
Yes.
So how long do patents last?
Another excellent question. That is kind of a sliding scale. They're granted on certain timeframes, and the reason I'm being so vague is because this is something I used to know because I was tested on it, but it's since fallen out of my head. But they're granted on certain timeframes. When you get that timeframe begins shortly after you apply and an examiner starts working on it, and then from there, I believe you get 20 years from that first date that's assigned. and you pay maintenance fees to make sure that they're kept up. And if you tweak it and do sort of certain requisite steps, you can keep pushing that out a little bit by little bit. And that's kind of how the game is played. Eventually, they're meant to go into essentially public domain. But does that really happen? Sometimes.
That's what I was going to ask you about. So I was going to ask if patents could be renewed. Is that how it technically works, or you have to technically change what's patented?
You can keep control over that patent for X amount of time, but you do have to tweak it eventually to quote unquote renew it. It has to be continual derivations and
Always be unique or original, right?
Exactly.
It has to remain that to keep going.
Yes.
So describe, how do patents affect medicine?
So this is a hotly contested topic in the realm of biotech and pharmaceuticals, because when we're talking about some of the most valuable patents, they are of discrete molecules that are used in medicine. So and once those become part of the public domain, that's when you get generics, because then any manufacturer can make them, and that's why they're much cheaper. So these are fought over bitterly. I mean, there is serious litigation going on all the time, and not only patent infringement, but trademark and copyright infringement with all of the marketing that goes into selling medicine. There's my interaction with pharmaceuticals is extremely limited. I knock on wood, thank God, haven't really ever been ill.
Needed one, sure.
But I couldn't imagine having to navigate that system where the same compound could be 10, 20, 30 times more expensive just because it was tweaked a little bit and it has a different use case, and now it's being sold under a different brand name.
Yeah.
So that's a legal and ethical quagmire that's just 10 miles wide and 10 miles deep.
And that's why I'm asking you, and I'm not telling people the answer. You brought up something pretty unique. So people throw these terms around often. There's patent, trademark, and copyright.
Mm-hmm.
In just the Spark Notes version, describe briefly the differences, because people will just say one or the other.
Yeah.
They're not always meant
Not
for
the same
thing. No.
Much more difficult to get a patent, first of all.
Yep.
That's an application process where you're showing that as an inventor or inventors that you have ownership over claims. So that the claims are really the value there. Copyright is available. I mean, what you've written down on that paper, just by virtue of doing that, you have a copyright to that. Now, to effectuate your copyright and to be able to bring a claim, that's if someone stole your notes and made something with it, you'd have to register your copyright. But copyright is a protective mechanism over recorded thoughts or expressions.
Describe some mediums for that for people to realize. It doesn't have to just be written. Could be, TV, movies, radio.
Absolutely. Any recorded expression that you produce, really. Yeah. And that's another fun area of law, because then it's, where are our boundaries? If you watch a lot of YouTube, which I watch a ton, just an offensive amount of YouTube, there's interesting copyright battles going on all the time, because especially now they're reaction channels. They're channels that will reproduce the entirety of someone's video and then just have the most minimal commentary on it possible, because they want to leech off the success of whatever's going on in that video. And it's an interesting battle to have, because we're talking about, well, is this person's filming themselves watching the video and reacting to that video, is that transformative enough to be its own unique expression, a response to something else?
Is it contributing?
Exactly, because you're allowed to critique and comment on and interact with someone's material. And how else could you do that if you couldn't show your source? So that's one thing. And then with trademark, that is more, So we're starting to think about logos and signifiers of a brand. So the way that marketed products appear. That's yes. So here we probably have a combination of all three. So starting with patent, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I do not know if this is accurate. I am making an assumption for illustrative purposes only. I know Ball makes this specific can. If Ball has a patent over the way that this aluminum can functions with this tab here, I'm sure this tab is probably patented or was patented at some point. This mechanism of opening a can, a tab, patentable idea. The way that this is written, the words on here, the copy, there's copyright protection on that if this is registered. If you see that little logo,
C with the circle.
Yeah, that means that they went through and actually registered it. And then insofar as trademark goes, we have things that have this can stand out on the shelf. Yeah. Logos, the specific font, that kind of thing. It's likely that itself is trademarked.
Yeah, pretty cool. So describe what patent pending means and what does that entail?
Well, it could mean a few different things. Sometimes it's a marketing ploy, quite frankly. I mean, I've never investigated this to the fullest extent, but if you call something patent pending, I would imagine that just means you've submitted an application. So an examiner still has to actually see if you're going to get one. Now, it's a way to deter competitors. If you say, I have an application in and my submit date is X, and if you try and copy me after that date, I can sue you over it. It's kind of like saying, hey, I'm intending on protecting my intellectual property here. But I'm cynical and skeptical, so I would see it more as like a marketing thing. Like, oh, look at how unique, and our thing is so interesting and good and new that we're gonna get a patent.
But it does have some protections, right? Because they could sue with that date, like you're saying.
If you have applied for a patent and the patent is granted, when you get that date, if someone starts copying it after that date, they are liable.
Gotcha. And if it's not approved, then it was pending for nothing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I definitely see where the marketing branding, that ploy kind of comes into play. So it's pretty unique. So tell me some examples of wild patents that you're aware of.
Wild patents. There are so many, but my favorite one is the following. So the way that this story goes, I forget exactly how it was told to me, but there was an inventor who wanted to patent a method and something very simple of fixing googly eyes to rocks or other
inanimate objects,
humanizing things to inanimate objects. And this person was kind of laughed out of various lawyers' offices. Eventually, an attorney decided to help this inventor out, and this inventor didn't really have much at the time. So, in exchange for legal services, they were offered, a small slice of the business. Again, I don't know if this is a true story or not, but I think it's funny. The patent was processed and accepted, and this formed the basis of Pet Rocks, which became a multi-million-dollar business. So just because you think that something is not useful, novel, and worth bringing to market, it very well could be. And if you peruse, all patents are public information. If you peruse these patent aggregation sites, like go on Google Patents, you can read everything about them. Some of them are absolutely wacky. They're bonkers. And some of them might not even actually work. The patent examiners are experts in certain realms of science and technology, so then they have to be, because part of it is that it has to actually do. You can't patent a perpetual motion machine because that defies the laws of physics. People have tried.
Pretty wild, right?
Mhm.
So, how does patenting work if you have a patent in the US and people are infringing that patent elsewhere outside the country? Are you able to chase after them? Is it worth it? How does that work?
So, without overstepping, because my knowledge is limited in this realm, and it's definitely faded over time. The US has treaties with many different countries where basically they've agreed to view our patents with the same legal protections as we view this. So it's a good back and forth.
It's shared.
Yes, but famously, this is not shared with every country. I
Yep.
mean, there there are
Countries you go
places.
to
Yeah.
get copies and
Oh yeah.
replicas.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. To my knowledge, China does not really care or have any desire to enforce U.S. patents on their soil.
Yeah.
Could they possibly be sued? Sure, but I don't. I don't really know where those go, quite honestly.
Good luck getting it anywhere, right? So, how does selling patents work? So, if I patented something, which I have not, if I wanted to sell it for some crazy amount of money, how does that happen?
A few different things. So the the actual marketing of it is probably going to be based on the revenue that it generates. Let's say the patent covers the application of a certain piece of technology. The calculus would be, okay, if I owned this, do I have the requisite manufacturing power, marketing acumen, that kind of thing to make even more value? And you can kind of see where, let's say your patent is on one of these GLP-1 agonists, that kind of thing. The market's small. Who really has the ability to manufacture that at scale, market, and get? But even though it is a small market, that's something of immense value because we're talking about revenue that could be in the hundreds of millions, billions a year. So the way that these deals are structured is kind of opaque to me because I haven't worked on one. I haven't seen kind of how it goes, but uh, they certainly can be extremely valuable. I've had clients in the past with intellectual property as part of their estate, and it is truly a challenge because pinning down what it's worth when is tough because it's fluid.
Yeah, because it could be worth something right now, but if that person passed away in 3 decades, it might not be valued or worth, the same thing. So, just keeping it in the United States, describe the legal action when patents are stolen within the US.
So that that would always begin with some sort of lawsuit, which then would be served on the person infringing it. And basically, what you have to show is that you have a valid patent. The patent covers what you say it covers, and that what they're doing is misusing one of those claims, one of those claimed ideas. And that, back to your prior question about patent pending, is also something that has confused me because pursuing this type of thing, like say you're an inventor of you're just one person and you do obtain a patent on and someone starts infringing on it. If you don't have a legal team behind you or the ability to pay fees to actually go after someone, you're stuck, which is kind of a huge flaw and a big cooling, chilling effect on actually using our legal system to keep commerce going. Um, how are you going to pursue a bad guy in that kind of claim without the financial resources to do so? Works a little bit differently in criminal, where if you press charges, you're going to go through a much different system. But in terms of patent infringement, we're talking about purely civil cases.
Yeah, and that's why these really big companies can do what they can because of their budget, right?
Yeah.
So, with that said, in your opinion, what does the future of patents look like? Look different? Is it evolving?
Well, I think they're going to become an even more integral part of our economy. I think they've always they've always served as a key background force because, especially here in the US, a lot of value is stored there in that intellectual property. As we continue down this path where technology fuses with our lives more and more, I see that as only becoming more and more relevant. Their patents are going to get more sophisticated, more granular. They will be about ever more specific things because now, there was a patent number one, and we might be on number 2 million at this point. So when you start coming up, when you have a pile of things that are all supposed to be unique and novel, not that we would ever get to the end of uniqueness and novelty, but at some point, something's got to give.
So, with that said, what does the future patents look like with AI now being in the conversation?
Yeah, that changes things dramatically because then who is the inventor?
Exactly.
Who owns what? Are we going to get to a point where AI becomes so integrated with this process that the companies that build and maintain the models get ownership over stuff that was made using their tools? I truly don't know the answer because it's murky, but that is why I'm skeptical. Because then on the other hand, AI can certainly show us blind spots and magnify areas that we may be overlooking. But do I feel confident in saying that it can create something at this point? Maybe. I don't know. It's become so good. It's become. It feels like it's close, but I can't know for sure.
So, how might AI be violating patents right now?
Well, to my understanding, what many of these models do is that they kind of ingest as much as they can from whatever source they have access to and then scramble it up and regurgitate it. So I see it more. I'll address the patent side by first talking about the copyright. I see it as more of a copyright issue because you can ask these various AI image generation tools to create stuff that is definitely violative of copyright, at least in my opinion, because it will sample publicly available images that were created by individual artists. So then it comes up with this amalgam that is, to me, copyright infringement because although it may be new and unique, it so heavily borrows from other sources that are protected that it doesn't, it's moot that it's unique. It isn't. It's looks different, but it isn't unique. So now using that same sort of scenario, we have patents. Now I could see a future where the large language models can read a whole body of work done in a specific field and then re-scramble the claim structure and what they're for to show us what we could do with this invention. But at that point, that, are we talking about the AI actually creating a new patent or so kind of what is it? Whereas this example is more clear to me where it's like we're violating violating copyright law. This, I don't know how this is going to look yet.
Yeah, and that's why I'm asking you, and I don't have the answers
Yep. I
myself,
don't,
right? You know more than I do.
I couldn't tell you.
So I have a unique question. You talked about copyright and trademark and patents. Can there be an argument that art can be patented?
Patented?
Is there an argument in some way?
Sure. I think that when we're talking not the image, but the modality, um, different tools could be created to create new and exciting types of art. but the image itself wouldn't be.
Makes sense, right? So describe, you might have done it already a little bit, but make examples of what cannot be patented. So some people think they can just patent anything.
No, you can't. So a fundamental law of nature, that like scientific principles.
Yeah, water.
Yeah, an element.
Yeah.
You can discover that, but no, you can't patent it. Things that are impossible to our current conception of the laws of physics. Now, if you're gonna demonstrate how a perpetual motion machine will work, and you can actually show that you can do it, hell yeah, that could be patented. But so far, that hasn't been done. And from there, I guess those are the boundaries that I'm aware of. There probably aren't more, but as long as it's not a fundamental concept of nature, it can't be. There are some gray areas, but it can't be an equation. A mathematical concept. Now, certain processes that use math in certain ways can be, but that's limited, highly limited. But techniques, that kind of thing, although methods are patentable, there are method patents, they do draw that line there. You can't stop someone from using a certain algorithm.
Sure. So that's what I feel like a lot of people don't realize the intricacies of patents and stuff. And that's something I kind of wanted to address that, if I patented calculus, I can't just hoard it to myself, right?
Mhm.
Especially if other people
And it's
discover it.
a great area of law. It's something that I spent a lot of time studying because I was interested in it. And at one point I wanted to pursue patent prosecution. So it's much different from prosecution in the criminal realm. Patent prosecution means something completely separate. Patent prosecution means representing inventors and drafting patents to bring to the USPTO and essentially argue that this should be patented and help the examiner work through the application. That is a highly specialized area of law that not only do you need your bar card, and you need to pass the bar in whichever state to practice, you need to sit for an additional exam that's administered by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, colloquially known as the patent bar. It's basically a comprehensive exam that's just about how to do this in front of the federal government. It's onerous. I took a crack at it. I never sat for the full exam. I took a prep course just to see how I'd feel. Hats off to the people who've done it because, wow. I mean, I thought the bar was tough. I gave it everything I had. The patent bar is its own unique beast. Much different, at least from the Florida bar exam.
Few and far between.
It's a strange animal, difficult to tackle.
Well, I'll have to find one.
Yes.
I'll have to ask.
Yes. You'll have
Ask
to
some
ask around.
questions. So, as an artist yourself, how do you feel about AI?
Well, I kind of go through phases. My guiding principle is honesty. If you use it to help your artistic practice and you're open about the fact that you're using this as a tool, I have no problem with it at all. I think it's a great tool, as a matter of fact. My problems arise when you obfuscate or deny using it at all. Then to me that's a problem because you're not showing your sources, so to speak, which is a big no-no, especially in academia. Like you gotta at least tell me where this is coming from. So if you're gonna use it to help you and to guide your focus, I mean, I do it all the time. I use it to essentially help with the inspiration aspect, and I am certain that there are people who forswear it completely. It's here to stay. So my temperature has cooled. I was super hot against it at first. Um, but like anything, I mean, it's a tool. How am I going to be mad at a tool? It's how we use it that matters.
You're more open minded than I anticipated. Because I was thinking I was going to ask you to describe the best you can how AI creates art,
Mhm.
and I'll let you answer that in a sec. But my thought was if you create some beautiful painting, and then AI just uses that and just regurgitates it, you're going to feel like your art's taken from you. And I'm sure there's countless people from comic books to examples XYZ that
Yeah.
feel that way. So how do you feel?
Well, like I've also cooled on that because I think that the the way that it does what it does, at least for now and from my research and as I understand it, it's sampling these images, this whole category of freely available images out on the internet, and then breaking them up into their constituent parts and rebuilding them into a new thing. So here's where I think that's very good. There are a lot of people who desire to create art, but they have not developed the technical skill to show it in the way that they want at this point. And if you're able to prompt an AI into showing exactly what you want without you having to physically do it, more power to you. I mean that's great. Just tell us what you did and how you got there. That's the name of the game, at least in my view, my current view.
Gotcha. So you talked about music law in school. Uh, Timbaland, the famous music producer. I don't know if you've heard about this yet, if I've sent it to you, but very famous music producer. He's been the first to sign a fully AI music artist. Have you heard about this yet?
No.
No. So his artist name is Tata, and he's naming the genre A-pop,
Okay.
and he's coining that term, and he's signed this AI. So there's a slew of artists and producers from the likes of guys like Rick Rubin, and he's voiced opinions that AI doesn't have a point of view of its own. You have to provide its point of view, and that's why he's, in my opinion, optimistic about AI. You know what I mean? That we don't have to be concerned about that. But other artists argue that AI music is about control because if you're controlling that point of view, um, and then that AI is getting credit, but it's owned. You know what I mean? It's all about control.
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts on AI in creating new music or film?
I welcome it. I encourage it. I'm skeptical that it's going to work. I mean, sure, someone was bound to try it, but at least to me, and I think that most people feel this way. We get attached to artists, musical, film, or otherwise, that we feel like we have an honest connection with. And I mean, maybe we'll get to a point where we're going to have honest connections with computers. I just don't, I don't see that yet. And there's fun stuff that AI is being used for. I mean, just look at all the random shit on YouTube
Yeah,
that it's there. It makes me laugh hysterically, like the just what people come up with. So I'm genuinely entertained by that, but it feels more cynical when it's a major record label manufacturing every aspect. And I don't know. I'm not the ultimate arbiter of taste, nor do I claim or want to be.
sure.
But if people like it, they like it. And if they feel like that's a viable next step for the music industry, more power to them. But I hope that's not going to stop, you know.
Real people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't heard its music. I know it has like I want to use the word avatar. It looks like a woman and they control what it looks like. But it's weird
Mhm.
because ultimately the person that owns the AI is the owner and
Mhm.
getting the real credit. So it's really sticky. So there's some artists that have really had hot takes and interviews and stuff. Um, but it's kind of in contention right now, and it's kind of a very new thing. So we'll see if A-pop takes off as a genre. Um, how well do you think? legislation can manage or control AI?
Well, it's a great tool. It's probably the only tool we have at this point, but the internet's the Wild West. I mean, we could try all we want, but there's been so many instances, look at the Silk Road, all that stuff. It to a certain extent, it's ungovernable. I mean, we're all connected, and with a few simple steps, you're really gonna be shielded from, I guess, I guess you could say you could be shielded from consequences, but probably not. Don't try it. I wouldn't, download Tor and get on the dark web. But I don't know. I don't using a painting with a broad brush and making things illegal and this and that. I don't know how well that'll work. It hasn't in the past. I think if we want rules about how this will work, it's gonna be self-governance for the time being. It's gonna be private business operations that want to operate in a certain way and doing things that are guided by their moral and ethical compass.
Do you think it should be based off the company, or do you think there should be, you know, a real, I say real, a governing body such as, the government?
Mhm.
Just
Tough
your
to say.
opinion.
Tough
Yeah.
to say. Um,
Because then we're relying solely on, money talks
yes.
and every business is there to make money.
hmm
So ultimately, those values can be skewed.
So I'll give you the ultimate law school answer, which is it depends. There are certainly things that can be done with AI that are criminal and need government intervention to punish. Like there are deep fakes that could destroy someone's livelihood and career. And I think that that is morally wrong, ethically wrong, and it should be legally wrong. So I think the government needs to step in at that point, and I'm sure that we will see case law develop in this realm. But if you use it for a malicious purpose to harm someone's reputation or beyond that, then yeah, if you use it to, let's say, steal someone's
Likeness.
like likeness, but it goes away from the intent aspect to harm them, and it's just, oh well, let's say Timbaland's record label makes the next AI singer and it sounds too much like Britney Spears and looks too much like Britney Spears. Then we're talking about we're fighting over money because you're taking money away from the original artist. So that could be a different lane than the first one that we discussed. So again, law school answer, it depends. It depends on what you do with it. If you're
Yeah.
really a bad actor, yeah, you got to get slapped like that. No, we're not going to use the technology for this. But where are the boundaries for the monetary damages? I think juries are smart enough to do that on a case by case basis. I think we'll let the facts fall where they may, have attorneys present their case on either side. Ultimately, jury of your peers will tell you whether what you're doing is bad.
Tell me your inspiration for your art.
Wide variety. Visually, Japanese media. I mean, from that to circle back where we started, I got interested in this because I was copying Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And from there, I got into anime, into manga. I love their visual culture, their visual style, their ability to tell stories in that way. So that's a huge part of what I like my things to look like visually. Now, all of my pieces start with some writing, whether it be a sentence, a page, shit, even a book. That piece of it comes from American popular culture. So the stories I like to show in my work and the things that are interesting to me oftentimes come from a literary tradition that is spearheaded by like Cormac McCarthy. I love westerns. I love uh, that bleak,
The
the
grittiness.
gritty sort of American frontier type thing. So it's kind of a fusion of those ideas. And I also love the that aesthetic. So that's kind of the
Culmination.
aesthetic that I like. And then from there, it really branches out. I mean, my favorite part about going to an art museum or a gallery, something like that, is finding new and exciting kind of visual vocabulary. So, in the same way that I like to collect words that I throw into my written work, you find visual motifs and ways of expressing, the figure or what have you by going and looking at other artists' works. So, kind of a running list of stuff that I like to look at, and whether it be films, I like to like scrub through frame by frame. There's a YouTuber, Every Frame a Painting, great channel, analyzes film to that level of granular detail. Love that kind of thing. Um, so that's kind of how I've built my I guess stockpile of reference material.
Who are your favorite artists?
What mediums?
Let it rip.
So
Start with paint.
painting, I would say I feel the closest. What I like the most, probably Caravaggio, master of a technique called chiaroscuro, which is very broad contrast between lights and darks. So very bright highlights, very dark shadows to really up the drama of a piece. So Caravaggio, excellent painter,
Where are they from?
Italian Renaissance,
Okay.
old.
Yep.
Um, I would say that Rubens probably is my biggest inspiration because I am attached to the Baroque era, so that's right after the end of the Renaissance. We're talking maximalist, giant pieces. So if you in close to you, Sarasota, there's the Ringling Art Museum. They have a bunch of Rubens. I would take a day and go look at them because they are incredible. They are monolithic giant paintings, which is what I love doing the most. Like my favorite paintings that I've made are 9 feet by 12 feet. I wish I could go bigger.
We're gonna talk about that in a minute.
So those two big, and you know, insofar as literary inspirations go, Carthy already mentioned. Love the way that he was able to tell stories, just gruesome and ugly, but still, I don't know. There's just something about it. Um, that's so compelling, and it just feels very Western. I really enjoy basically any manga.
Okay.
I find myself reading them quite regularly.
So Japanese. So for the listener that doesn't know, that's pretty specific. Describe manga.
It's This is a gross oversimplification, but Japanese comic books.
Yeah.
Um, I read a ton of it, all digitized, just so I can like read the new releases. A ton of different people create them. Some people even do them freelance. They have an idea and they draw and they just put it out on the internet. I like looking at all that stuff. Uh, I try to watch as many movies as humanly possible. David Lynch. So David Lynch is an inspiration in every medium for me. Incredible filmmaker, incredible musician, and an incredible fine artist. His paintings and sculptures are in a league of their own. Uh, Incredible. He was a creative powerhouse. He really had a mastery of everything. So I guess if I could sum it all up in one artist that really is a lodestar of what I like to make and what I aspire to, David Lynch. in my opinion, the best book about making art. I know that you love, the creative act, and I have to read it so I can give you my judgment. There's another book. It is called A Room to Dream. It's a partial autobiography because it's David Lynch. So the Audible version is David Lynch and his childhood friend reading different parts of the book. And David Lynch wrote part of the book, and his childhood friend wrote other parts. And it's interesting to see how the different life events happened from two perspectives. But what a incredible meditation on the creative process.
He's still
And
around, David Lynch?
no,
He
he
passed.
passed recently, uh, which was it was very sad.
Yeah.
There a lot of people put their tributes out to him, but he loved cigarettes, heavy smoker. So I can't remember exactly how he died, but it could have been emphysema, something along those lines.
Yeah. Very sad. I got one more book recommendation. It's Stephen Pressfield's The Art of War. And it's kind of a pun of the War of Art. So I make sure I say it correctly, but incredible book. I should have brought a copy. Have you read it? Phenomenal, phenomenal book on creativity. That and Rick Rubin's The Creative Act are top two for me. So I think the one other thing I'm curious about for your favorite artist, do you want to touch on music?
Sure.
Are what musicians inspire your art?
So I listen to a ton of stuff in the studio that definitely leaks into what I make. And it really, oh man, it runs the gamut. I there are certain songs that I want to listen to at certain times. So Orange Colored Sky by Nat King Cole, like I will play that over and over and over again. I don't know why I have such an obsession with that song, but I also have an obsession with the color orange, which is a different thing in its entirety. But that, so from that era, you know, all the way, I will listen to anything and kind of give it a fair shake, and I love listening to stuff. So that's that era, especially Nat King Cole. So kind of things in that vein, something that I listen to and search for a feeling when I'm making work. And then another end of that spectrum is I love thrash metal and anything super aggressive. So, and I like when it's about certain things. So there's a band called Sabaton who makes, I guess it's thrash adjacent, but it's a bit heavier metal that are about historical kind of battles and different warrior cultures. And then I also, going all the way and super deep into thrash, I love bands like Slayer and that kind of thing. Very loud, aggressive, driving, high BPM music, and uh, everything in between. I think everyone has a somewhat unsatisfying answer to this question because I think most people think they have a wide and eclectic taste in music. I feel like I hope that I do. I
Yeah.
listen to just about anything. Queso Pluma on my playlist all the time. I love him. Uh, I kind of just let the algorithm rip. I kind of I give it wide parameters and just see what happens.
What's your favorite expression of art?
My favorite truly is painting, and I think the reason why is because it is the what makes painting so compelling is the challenge of evoking an emotion or reaction with just a static image. And I am full disclosure, I'm biased because I feel that I am a painter. That's what I'm drawn to most. That to me, the ability to convey a story with an image or a feeling with an image or something just with that image, to me, that's the magic. So that's my favorite expression.
Do you see something like photography in a similar light that it can capture you, even though it was literally captured and not painted or drawn?
I was down on photography for a while until I took a film photography class and learned how it capturing that image, the way I feel about photography, it's much more sculptural than painterly. And the reason why, at least with film photography, there's a chemical process. I was fortunate enough to take substantial amount of film photography in college, and we developed film from the roll itself to making prints by hand, and we used fully manual cameras, antique stuff, incredible. Even large format, like physically lifting the shutter
Yeah.
and putting the plate into the chemicals. So there's process, and I am someone who has an obsession with process. I like to do the steps and check the boxes. So that's when I fell in love with photography. So I see it as the intersection between painting and sculpture, because you are creating that image, you are composing that image. Your tools are much different because, to a certain extent, portraiture. When you work with portraiture or event photography, you can set the stage and you have some control. You know, automobile photography, landscape, wildlife,
Yeah.
you
Street
have no control.
photography. Yep.
You're composing with randomness. So that there's a beauty to itself. And then once I understood it through film photography, that's when my appreciation of digital photography grew. I was down on it. I kind of was like taking a picture. Now I understand it's much different than, whipping out your phone and doing whatever.
Exactly. So my wife hates it. I dread selfies. iPhones are great. They got great resolution and they keep coming further and further along. And they're becoming the new point shoot cameras. Before you'd have to get a dedicated camera to do that. Now your phone could do it in your pocket. But what I like about photography with a dedicated camera, like you really have to control what you can. And then there's things that you can't control, and that's the confines that make it fun. So like I love street photography and it pays very little, if anything. Hopefully you could sell prints. But like I love traveling because like I can capture things that might only exist in that one moment. Like I took this really cool picture in Portugal. I'll show you later where I was taking a photo of this cool sculpture and a plane was flying between the trees. And I just happened to capture tree sculpture and a plane flying above it. And like that literal moment in time can't exist ever again. So it's pretty cool that way, right?
Mhm.
Um, you've already answered the question and you said that you paint every day.
Close to every day.
Close to every day. Describe the extent. Is there a dedicated time? Is it when you're only inspired?
I think that waiting for inspiration is almost always a mistake. There are times when I feel more gung ho about it than others, but I would say I'm perpetually inspired. There are times when I get an idea that I have to do, then it becomes my complete and total obsession. I'll spend a weekend making sure I finish the painting. But sometimes doodling is enough. Sometimes just keeping it sharp, keeping the eye sharp, hands sharp, so that you're ready when inspiration strikes. Because that's kind of the name of the game, not only in painting, but I actually in life, at least in my life, I I would say that I do my absolute best to stay ready, so that when something does materialize, you can act. You're in a position of action. You don't have to decline to do something just because you're not ready at that point, because you're always ready.
Yeah, you're sharp. Do your dreams inspire your paintings?
I don't. I struggle because I wish I had more vivid dreams. My dreams typically are quite concrete, and I hope that there's a psychoanalyst out there who can help me interpret this. But much of my dreams are about me losing all my teeth, or suffering some kind of horrific injury.
Fears,
Yeah,
irrational or
yeah, and
rational?
I don't know what that speaks to, but and that really only happens if I remember my dreams.
Sure.
Apparently, we dream
Every day.
correct,
Every time
but
you
I
sleep.
I don't.
Yeah. It has to do with the sleep cycle. And eventually my goal is to bring on professionals to dedicate time to this. And I'm not a professional. Um, something really cool. I'm sure you admire Salvador Dali. if I could only pick one artist for me, that's him. And I was just heavily inspired because the Dali Museum is in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I got to go on a field trip, and I've actually gone back several times. And because I got to see his work so extensively up close and everything else, it really, influenced. And I'm pretty partial and biased because I get to see his stuff whenever I really want. But the reason I asked about his dreams or your dreams, there's this cool story that Salvador Dali would intentionally sleep in a chair, and he would fall asleep with a key in his hand. And he knew as he would doze off and the key would fall out of his hand, it would wake him up. And he would wake up and try to paint what he was dreaming of. Very unique, very Dali, right? So he would do this on purpose. And then that's how he would get these crazy, and I'm sure drugs played a role too, but that's how he got this crazy inspiration. It's pretty wild. So you noted earlier that you love big pieces, especially for your own art. Describe using large canvases, how big they've gotten, and kind of why you use them.
So originally, that scale frightened me because I thought, well, how am I going to fill this up with stuff? And really, I can tell you the day I decided to do it, my senior year of college, we had a very small group
At Middlebury?
at Middlebury studio art thesis class. So these were all studio art majors who were taking this course. You had to take it at least one semester. I took it 2 or 3 semesters just because I really loved it.
You
It
kept
was,
getting new credit?
yeah,
Wow.
because we kept building our portfolio. I mean, it was constant. Every other week, you presented a new piece, and it could be anything. So I started with etchings, prints. So I did a ton of intaglio printmaking. I had a giant press, all kinds of stuff. So that fall, we, as a class, went to New York to go to the Armory, which is a large international art show, and all of the shows kind of in and around New York. It's a huge. Every gallery is doing something at the time, and I was more ill than I had been in my entire life. I could barely breathe. I could barely stand. I could barely walk. But to make it to this field trip, our professors needed someone with a 16-passenger van license. I was the only one in the program who happened to have one because of some other things that I was involved in on campus. So I think the reason why I remember these 2 days so clearly is because I was so sick and I drove everyone. And I told myself, please just, I was praying to any God who would hear me, just let me be coherent enough to pilot this vehicle safely with the entire art department. We got there safely. And I saw these enormous paintings that were gorgeous. I'm trying to remember the name of the artist. It's a Chinese artist. They were huge. They were Gagosian, ultra detailed, stunningly beautiful.
When you
I
say ginormous, give me some numbers. 10 feet,
way more,
20, 30 feet.
probably 30 by 40 feet.
Yeah, these are
It's just
huge.
enormous. And I turned to our thesis advisor and I said, I would love to make stuff that's this big. And he looks at me and he's like, so do it. And I don't know why that was such an epiphany to me, but I looked and, you know what? That's the correct attitude. So I went on Amazon and I bought the biggest drop cloth I could find, which was 10 feet by 12 feet, maybe a little bit bigger. And a drop cloth. It's for people, who painting their homes to like put down on the floor to prevent splatter.
Yeah, it's cheap, right?
Cheap. And I tacked it to the largest wall we had in Johnson, the art building. And I asked if I could buy rollers and gesso to basically prep the canvas for a painting, and they were totally game. So I got gesso. Gesso is like a glue with chalk suspended in it. It's like a pure opaque white, and you put layers and layers and layers on a canvas to make it white, and then I hand sanded it. And I'm 2 weeks into just prepping the canvas. I'd never done it before. I had never gone that far back in the process and tried to make my own starting materials. Typically, I just
Bought it.
yeah, or just had it provide. So I learned to do all that, and then I had this giant 10 by 12-foot white thing, and I had already put so much into it that I was like, okay, that's the painting. No, and I knew that that couldn't be the way that it would be because nothing against abstract art, it's just not my thing. So then I was like, what am I gonna do with all this space? So I decided that the concept for a series of a triptych, 3 paintings, would be a theoretical art gallery. So these 3 paintings would be about art galleries because I had just been in them. They had just given me this great epiphany. So I wanted to tell a story of this hypothetical art gallery that I would go to search for inspiration, which then liberated me completely because I'm like, oh, these paintings could be about anything. The only thing I need to put in them is a couple of walls, a floor, just to give the viewer a sense of where we are. And since it's basically the size of a building, uh, put in life-size other different artworks. So that's what I painted. I painted, this tour guide who was showing people around this place. And because they were so large, you could walk right up to it and feel like you were looking at a painting, but it was in the painting. So at least to me, I thought that was cutesy and clever. And that was enough to just have me swinging for the fences. So I was cranking them out. The first one took a while just because I had to experiment to even figure out how I was going to build this. The studio assistant, another huge shout. He's a working artist, Colin Boyd. Please look him up on Instagram, anywhere. Incredible mentor and incredible human being. He never said no. He helped me and all of us tremendously. We would go to him with ideas, far-fetched craziness. And because he's such a proficient and skilled sculptor and builder, we made it happen with his help. I mean, I told him I need a frame for something. This go to the wood shop. We built it together. We did all this stuff. It was incredible.
Was he a professor?
I'm not sure if he taught. He did teach classes, but his specific role was as sort of the technical lead for getting shit done, quite frankly. Like
Yeah.
if a student or one of the faculty artists had an idea, he would be the guy. Like the logistics and the practical, like how are we gonna do it? He was that guy.
The founder of Shopify, I just listened to an interview of him. He's got a team called GSD. That's the team name, GSD, and it's for Get Shit Done. So if you're on the
Colin's
GSD
that
team,
guy.
yeah, he's on the GSD team. It's pretty
100%.
cool. Did I ever tell you about what my sister did for canvases?
No.
So didn't paint very often. She was a journalism major. She really loved graphic design. Graphic design. She still does, but she would buy art already completed at thrift shops, really cheap, just for the canvas. And then sometimes she would use part of the canvas that was like already painted, or she would just paint over it.
That's a great idea.
And as like a really cheap way to make art, she would buy that.
There's a guy on the internet who takes paintings like that and paints into them new stuff, and he does there's this whole series of where he paints the mechs from Neon Genesis Evangelion into these old-timey looking painting. I love that.
Yeah, there's a guy
I
that did
love that
The
your sister
Office.
did that.
Yeah. What are some goals you have for your art?
My goals have evolved dramatically. It's something we talked about a little bit earlier, but I vacillated between wanting, wider appreciation and a venue to have these things shown, and sort of shifted that drive into making things for an audience of one, myself. I really like the stuff that I make. I put them up in my own office. I put them up in my own living spaces. So I'm very happy doing that. And another thing that makes me very happy is I am extremely fortunate to have a lot of friends, a lot of people that I talk to on a regular basis, and we bounce ideas off each other. And they are extremely supportive of the arts. So they'll throw me an idea and say, "Oh, I'm working on one now. I'm sorry, Declan, that this has been so slow, but uh, he's like, "Oh, I'd love to put something up in my office that's based on Invincible." I'm like, "Oh, that's I love Invincible. I'd love to make a painting like that." So, just when people are excited about what you're doing and they want to own a piece that you make or be a part of the creative process in some way, that's what I love. So, a broader platform to engage with people and make stuff in my style, but that they want. That would be my ultimate goal. Just to have something steady, nothing crazy. Just a way for people to have things in their life that they appreciate and they like looking at. My favorite piece that I made recently was just such a scenario. I have a very good friend named Michael who wanted something special for his new home. And it was a beautiful concept. We worked together. He told me broad strokes what he'd like, and then he kind of let me run free with those concepts. He gave me some people that he wanted in it, some reference photography of those real life people, and then he said, I just interviewed him kind of like this, learned about what he wanted, and it culminated in something that we both really love. And he gets to look at that every day, and that to me is peak artistic expression.
Exactly. What is House Silverstein?
It is my defunct fashion brand. So that was another, maybe not, maybe defunct is not charitable enough. It's on hiatus. I There was a an obsession in my college years, so 2015 to 2019, with this mystique around high fashion and the world of the creative world of designing clothing. So I started first. I was extremely inspired by Virgil Abloh. I think every contemporary designer is to a certain extent. And Pyrex Vision, his original project, was screen prints on stuff that he would go buy. So I figured, well, what better way to start? I know how to screen print from my schooling, so I'm just going to start there and see where this goes. So that's where it started. And people got excited, and that in turn made me excited because it gave me the confidence to branch out more. So of course it started just with the screen printed stuff, but then I learned very modest amount about how to cut and sew and make specific things. So then I was making these sculptural pieces where I would have my friends come to the studio and we'd make these plaster casts of parts, their torso or their arms or whatever, and create like these, I guess you could call it armor style pieces out of different plastics and metals that I'd find around the shop and like cast them to that, or these like melted glass things. So it really it my foray into fashion, which is what House Silverstein is, um, I guess was sort of an extended sculptural exploration of fashion from that lens. And I'd love to. I never wanted it to end. It was extremely fun. We had a show with a lot of different a lot of different people were involved. It was great. We had 50 or so models that all had custom clothes, and we had an audience and we put the whole thing on at school. And would have loved to keep it going, but the reason I love painting is because you really can do it anywhere. You could just set up and let it rip. This is an excuse, but to continue doing clothes, there's a little bit more involved, and I don't really have a way to do screen printing right now. I tried. Uh, there's an incredible studio space in Miami Beach called Olight. They have a great print shop. It's just the only thing stopping me was that it was impractical and it was really hard for me to get there during law school to do the screen printing stuff. If you're in Miami Beach and you want to do printing, I think they have Intaglio printmaking as well. So on a press with plates and the screen, check them out. They have open hours at certain points. You just got to get registered with them.
So I wouldn't say it ended. I would just say it's not active right now.
Sure.
Right. So you're an avid cyclist. Tell me how you fell into that.
So there's a subculture within contemporary road cycling of COVID cyclists. I'm definitely a COVID cyclist. So this is how it started. While I was preparing to take the LSAT, COVID happened. And at that point, I was hopelessly devoted to the gym. So, gym style workouts, bodybuilding, hypertrophy, with a little powerlifting thrown in. I didn't give a shit about cardio. I despised it. I basically never did it. I did the minimal possible. It's even less than minimal. So, gyms shut down. I am distraught. I felt like I didn't have a personality outside it. I felt so attached to it. I spent so much time in there. I didn't know what to do. So the first step was finding a resistance training mechanism outside the gym. And what that was calisthenics on Olympic rings. So as that developed, I got more interested in building out all components of my fitness. So what calisthenics taught me was that you be very strong at, dumbbell incline bench or flat bench or squat or what have you. But you can't do one dip on a pair of rings, or you can't do one pull up on a pair of rings without cheating, or that kind of thing. So it showed me that even though I'd spent years training, I was weak in so many aspects. Then it got me thinking, what else am I not covering here? That was endurance sport. So first thing I did, I thought to myself, well, I got nothing really to do right now because what I was I was kind of splitting my time between working at a law firm and a neurosurgical practice, and it was both like loosey goosey because nobody was going into offices. So I had time, and I was like, well, I gotta. I'll get running shoes, I guess, and see what happens. So I ran. I was enjoying that. I started swimming. I was enjoying that. I'm like, oh, I'll just do what everyone on YouTube is doing. I'm gonna do I'm gonna do an Ironman. Fuck it. So that was my first thing. I was like, I'm gonna do an Ironman, and I was hearing none of it. People were like, you gotta really think about this. It's like not something that happens like that. I wasn't hearing it. So I was running a lot, swimming a lot. Finally decided time to get a bike. So I went to a bike shop locally, told them I'm never going to do a group ride. I want to be by myself. Just get me on something that's fast, low carbon fiber. I want those skis. So I got
From the get-go?
from the get-go. So I got a triathlon bike thinking that that's what I was going to do. Within 3 days, I crashed, horrific road rash, completely skinned my arms and legs. I was in these like Tegaderm sleeve bandages. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how to ride a bike well enough to do this. I've made a terrible mistake and I've wasted all this money. So as I was healing, I decided I still want to do this. I can't give up. So I'm going to invest even more money and I'm going to get an indoor trainer. So you can get these devices that connect to your computer. You can use different training software to have the computer talk to the trainer itself and set a level of resistance that corresponds to your power output. That's how you do intervals in training. So as power goes up, typically the training interval decreases. And there's a lot of different levers you could play with. So, you as you start going up in power, you get to your different power zones. Anyway, that's an aside. Got this trainer, and through the trainer, I fell in love with the sport. It was a perfect way to spend time, quite honestly, because I would watch a movie, watch my shows, listen to podcasts, what have you, and still get this great workout in. And after a while of that, I felt comfortable on the bike, but I felt uncomfortable bringing this specific bike outdoors. So I actually sold it. And I was very fortunate because at the time it was COVID. So people wanted to do stuff outside. I was able to laterally swap out of that bike into a regular road bike. So I'll tell you the difference. So if you've seen those people in Lycra in and around your neighborhood on bikes that have kind of these wide handlebars. The brakes are on the outside, and then they're up on those skis, kind of like this. That's to decrease their frontal area and decrease their coefficient of drag so that they can kind of cut through the wind with minimal power. On a regular road bike, it's a little bit wider handlebars, so you have much greater control. And the brakes are right there with your hands. Your ability to change gears is right there. That's the type of bike that it's more appropriate to ride in a group with. So if you've seen the people in the skis, that's one thing. Road bikes are another thing. So I get the regular road bike, and I finally say to myself, okay, like I'm gonna go replicate this training outside. And I did. And slowly over time, I found a group of like-minded people who were doing the same thing. So that was my foray in getting into cycling. So that was the beginning. What made it stick? I think it's an aesthetically beautiful sport for two reasons. I think it look when it is as much about the visual as it is about the physical, because if when you get the kit just right and the bike is clean and you're really moving along and you've developed a pedal stroke that's elegant and fluid, it just looks so pro. And there's just something about that. Probably some fusion with that and then the art
It's
obsession.
artistic.
Yeah. And the second thing, the physical aspect, the suffering, because it's so low impact, unless you get hit by a car, it you can prolong the pain that you feel. And the pain comes from muscular fatigue, cardiovascular fatigue. It's really hitting you on all angles. And then you still have to keep the thing upright and stay in the street. So it's extremely compelling. It's a Sisyphean task that, and you'll never reach the top. You'll never be, Ade at the Tour de France. But you can feel yourself getting stronger every single ride. And then you meet people who are like-minded. So my brother had a group of friends who he introduced me to that were the true psychos. They wanted to start riding as a group at 4:30 a.m. And at first I was so reluctant because then your whole day is shot. And then I thought to myself, hey, it's COVID. My boss wants me to be at the office at like noon and stay till 6:30. So
What do you have to lose?
yeah, it's like I could go from 4:30 to 7, sleep from 7 to 10, and then still have 2 hours to be good for it. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going. And then we never really missed a group ride after that. It was so fun. It was like having 2 whole days in one day. Because we'd have the 4:30 crew, we'd have conversations, we'd train really hard. I'd get my ass kicked at the beginning and feel slowly better and better. And then, come back, recuperate a little bit, and then like have a day. But my workout was already done. So between that and the calisthenics, I was living the dream. It was so fun. It was just I reveled in it. And then that's really when cycling became a key part of my life. Shortly thereafter, I told myself I'm going to try to ride my bike in some form or fashion every single day for a year. So I made it 347 days. That was my longest streak of just doing some sort of ride. And I still maintain that as much as possible to this day. It's extremely rare that a day goes by that I don't ride my bike.
What
Either on the
caused
train
that
or inside.
break? Anything major or just life?
Florida bar exam.
All right, so you became a lawyer.
Pretty
valid.
So of the days that I missed, so last year, I did not ride my bike the day of I rode my bike the day before the bar. I did not ride my bike the first day of the bar. I did not ride my bike the second day of the bar. And I was in a terrible headspace. So I didn't ride my bike again until the Saturday after that Wednesday, which was the second day of the bar. And I felt good.
Yeah, it's tough. It's mentally
Yeah, I
strained.
was cooked. I should have rode. I just didn't.
Sure. So earlier you said suffering. Do you measure the suffering in time or distance?
Time, definitely. Distance, you can game. Once you're fit enough, you can go as far as you want with proper fueling. Distance is not the true difficulty. It's speed, how fast you're covering that distance. It's time is everything. Time is how you conceptualize, at least to me, everything on a bike. How much power for how much time
What's the furthest you've rode?
in one shot?
Yep.
One 180
180.
miles.
Because the people listening here, that's unfathomable. How long does that take?
You're out the whole day. And I'll tell you, it's not could it be done without dismounting a bike? Sure, but you'd kind of have to coordinate that. This is with brakes.
Sure. Yeah.
But I will tell you that there was a time, you know, when I was getting into the sport where I had a group of friends who we'd organize a century. So a century is like the colloquialism for a 100-mile ride fairly regularly. In law school, I was doing one a week. I
100
was
miles.
doing 100 miles every Saturday because my ride, there was a group ride. It currently goes on. It's at a great bike shop. It's called Zeal, Ziel. It's in Coral Gables. So I was hooked in with them before for a while. They actually built up the bike that I have now. Great mechanic, great shop. Anyway, their Saturday ride from their shop is 70-ish miles, maybe a little bit more. But my ride to the ride and my ride back to my place from there would kick it up to the 100. So I'd ride to the ride, do the ride back, tool around a little bit more. And then every Saturday it'd be like 90 and a bit to 100. And once you get that first century under your belt, you realize it's really not that far on a bike. So then, of course, you want to push it. So then I was like 120. 20 was fine. Pushing 150. 150 is fine. And you're just like, all right, how far are we going to take this? And really, there are some super dedicated individuals who do this thing called RAM, Race Across America. It's not in one go, but in a supported way, they're riding thousands of miles. It's totally doable.
Wow. So how long was the 180? Just hours? 8 hours? 10?
Probably 10. It was a whole
10
day.
hours? Yeah.
We started before dawn and it was dark by the
Okay.
time we
Yeah.
stopped.
Could have been 12 hours.
Yeah.
You've done some competition.
Yes.
Just describe some of the ones that you've done, and then do you plan on doing more in the future?
I love racing my bike. I want to do more of it. I've done, I guess, two different disciplines, and the third discipline, the one that I think I'd really excel at, is available. I just haven't invested really. It's all on me. I should go and try it. So that discipline is road racing. It's the type that most people are familiar with. It's like the Tour de France. It's point to point, or it could be a circuit. But it's, those races are interesting to me because they're longer distances and the tactics are much different. So road racing is one thing. It's nothing that I've done competitively. So let's take a look at another type of cycling. Criterium racing, closed circuit, small lap. So tightly, we're talking about a 1 mile loop, or a 1 mile circuit would be long. We're talking laps and laps and laps and laps of this closed circuit. Very fun, super fast paced. Those happen somewhat regularly here in South Florida. The scene's not huge, but it's cool. And it lets you test basically your 1 hour power against, other local cyclists. That's very fun. It's a different kind of suffering. The big downside, and something that I've experienced, is crashing, quite frankly. That when you're that close and jockeying for position, especially we're all amateurs, we're not paid to do this. We're not good truly by any means. You can be really strong, but handling a bike is a completely different story. I don't feel like I'm a pro.
The skill.
Yeah, I feel nowhere close to even proficient. So take a spill, that happens. Now the third aspect that I truly love, is it's called time trialing. that has the moniker of the race of truth. The reason why is because it's you, your equipment, and the clock. So it's a predefined course for a set distance, and the only objective is you against the clock. How fast do you go? Fastest time wins. I love that. It's pure, and that suits my skill set on a bike the most because you lock into a specific power and you just hold it and you just grind it out, which I love doing. So that's really my preferred discipline.
For a lot of people listening, they don't realize the amount of stats that go in, especially things that can be tracked, like the data that you use, especially between the indoor trainer and outside and road and whatnot. Um, just for people to kind of understand what are like average rider stats. I know it's pretty vague, and then good, and then compare that to pro regarding like output and stuff like that.
Sure. So thinking of it in terms of ratios is helpful because that's truly where you get the best understanding. So Tom tried the trainer once just so he can get an idea of what different power levels look like. And I would say a beginner is putting out between 1.5 and just under 2 watts per kilogram of body weight. So watts is the actual measure of power. That can be measured in a few different ways. There are power meters on certain bikes that can show you what power you're producing. And then the trainers also have an internal way of computing that. So that way. Then you get to that just over 2 to 3 range. That's someone who rides a good amount. They are able to produce a greater amount of power per kilogram of their body weight. Then we're going to get to the weekend warriors that we're getting strong between 3 and 4. 4 and up, we're getting to someone who's very dedicated to this and who could place well at local events. So now we start traveling 4 to 5. The closer you get to 5, the closer you are to a legitimate contender to be a domestic, so a USA pro cyclist, someone who could be paid a pittance, but paid nonetheless to ride their bike. There are influencers on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube who are that, like getting a 5 or at 5. They are extremely fit. They would do well. They go to very high level amateur races, like world championship level type for amateurs. Then once you start traveling 5.5, 6, you're getting into a level where you could legitimately consider yourself ready for international competition. So international competition, what does that look like? There are tiers to it. There are continental pro teams and world tour pro. So continental's kind of one notch back. You may not have heard of people on continental teams, but they're exceptional cyclists. The cyclists you've heard of are in the world tour. That's what Lance was doing. So at that level of power, we're talking 6 plus watts per kilo. The best in the world are 7 plus. So when I say 6 and 7 plus, anyone can do that type of power. I mean, Tom, when he hopped on the trainer, was at 10, 11, 12 watts per kilo for short bursts. So the true athleticism and test of suffering and skill is the time that you can put out that amount of power. So world class is 7 watts per kilo for 20 plus minutes. To do that and to keep your bike upright and race it is so remarkably difficult. I cannot convey to you or to the audience what that feels like. I would recommend trying it. Find something with a power meter on it and feel what that feels like. It is a level of pain that is beyond comprehension unless you've felt it before. And then the frightening thing to remember is that the pain that you're feeling is the same pain that they are feeling. They have just trained themselves to handle it. So they live in that that's how they know it's working, whatever it is they're doing. And when they attack, on a mountain pass, that kind of thing, they were able to overcome what that feels like to excel. And that is the beauty of cycling, because it is extended, protracted suffering while still looking elegant. It is the most beautiful sport in the world, in my opinion.
Pretty wild, right? So you touched on it a little bit. How does comparing like flat Florida compare to places like Europe and France and other places?
So I hope that I have the opportunity to ride in more mountainous terrain, because you're right, it really doesn't. Our numbers are so inflated down here in terms of average speed,
So flat.
Yeah. So I mean, I give it the beans whenever I can, just because I that's how I like to train. But the average speeds are so inflated because putting out however many watts I'm putting out here for however long, that could be 22, 23 mile an hour average. But you start getting on an incline, those numbers look way different. So here, it's great. It's fast, flat, super fun, but climbing is the sport. I mean, I had the great fortune of riding in Claremont,
Florida?
Florida,
Yeah.
which is hilly. It's
Yeah.
much different. Oh man, that changed my view of the sport completely. I mean, I loved the sport before when I had only known the flats, but just the opportunity to ride up there. I mean, now I want to go to the mountains.
It's eye opening, right?
Yeah,
So are you going to get back to eventually trying either a duathlon or a triathlon?
yeah. Never say never. I mean, I've refound my love of running with my current training regimen, so that's definitely there. And I just I gotta find a way to put swimming back into my life. It's that again. It's a beautiful sport. It's just the schlep with the cap and the goggles and every kind of there's just a lot of process to it, where with my bike, I put the kit on, hop. I got I'm a little bit of a lunatic in that respect. My indoor trainer is permanently set up with a bike frame I use specifically for that, and it's in the center of my room. So I interact with it in some way literally every day. And I mean, I near as makes no difference, ride every day. And then I'm working on it or doing something. So I just that fits into my life so well. And maybe I just gotta try harder for swimming to fit in that way. But if I was ever gonna I want to do it. It's just to be a triathlete is to be inconvenienced at all points in life.
It's true. And it's also, yeah, you just said it. It's because it's convenient in your room because getting your kid on for this, you're used to. But if you had a pool in your back door and it only took you
If I had a
minutes
pool
to
in my
work
room,
out,
yeah, I'd do it.
if you had a pool in your room, that'd be even
There are
easier.
probably people who do.
Couldn't tell you. I don't know. So you've decided to pursue potentially another career, another direction, and I'll let you tell me about that. Where are you going?
Sure. So I've decided to put in an application. So I've become a candidate as of today, and we'll see how it develops. To be a reservist in the United States Marine Corps. It's it's something that I've always felt a calling to do for whatever reason that just never materialized at other points in life. But now that I feel stable and I found a career that I love and something I want to be involved in and come back to, I think that it's time to use the immense privileges and blessings that I've received for the benefit of others. And I feel drawn to that mission.
Oh yeah. So what first inspired you to join the military?
Well, the very first inkling that I had that I wanted to do something like this was honestly through meeting one of my mom's college roommates. They're still very close to this day. And she was introduced to the military sort of in a time of crisis through some kind of shocking developments in her own life at that time when she was in college. She had to make some snap decisions, and the only way to stay at the school she was at with my mom was to go through the armed services. And at first, that was much different from the life path that she wanted, but it materialized into an astonishingly positive thing. So I always had this positive conception of it, and I always felt drawn to the service aspect, really of everything. I did a substantial amount of that type of work in school, and I just what is the point of becoming educated and able to do things if you don't do them for people who need them? So to me, it's kind of the ultimate manifestation of that. And I don't know. At earlier points, I had a plan. I had a plan to go to medical school and to go to medical school through the NROTC program. They have certain scholarships available, and then do reconstructive surgery through that lens. And things happen. Life gets in the way. I do view that as kind of an excuse, but nevertheless, here we are. Now that I've found some stability and I found a niche, I I still feel that calling. I feel like there is more I can be doing. I feel like this is an aspect of myself that has not yet been fulfilled to its maximum potential. And so I reached out to a recruiter. I just like, tell me what my options are at this point, and it's been incredible. I can't say enough positive about the team that I've worked with. Um, they are the most inspiring, the most positive, the most motivational group of people that I've ever met. It's incredible just to be around them, quite frankly. So I to be a part of it is it will be a huge honor when I achieve it. Keep in mind, there's a lot still left. At currently as we sit here, I am a candidate. So I've signed a contract. I want to be put forward for evaluation on the board that will be shipping the OCS 250, so Officer Candidate School 250. Uh, but regardless, whatever happens, I'm not going to stop until I get there and achieve that goal, because I think uh, it's something that I want to be a part of no matter what.
Describe how it works having the educational life experience that you have and then joining specifically the reserves.
Sure. So the reason why reserves, I want to continue doing what I do here at home. But I still want to be in a position where I can help if ever needed. So basically, what the commitment looks like, at least just speaking from what I understand about the Marine Corps, the first training phase is officer candidate school, which is a 10-week program in my case, but it can be 2 6-week programs if you're going through it through college. Then after that, there's something called the basic school, which is for Marine officers specifically, which is a 6-month program. And then after that, you go to an MOS school. So an MOS is it's tantamount to your job. So then you go to a certain MOS school. Now, what I thought I was going to do is go to the JAG Corps because I'm already a licensed and barred attorney, but I didn't know that uh, JAGs don't. There isn't a direct reserve route for that. So as of right now, I'm going to be picking an MOS that's separate from being an attorney, which I'm happy to do. Quite frankly, I'd love to be able to have kind of two tracks that complement each other but are different. So that's my current goal.
Describe what those MOSs could look like.
Oh man, they are highly variable. Google them, like download the MOS list if you're thinking about this kind of thing because you can see everything. Um, in my position, the beauty of it is you're an unrestricted line officer, so you can really do anything. Other applicants. So there's the applicants, the candidates, and then the people who are selected. Other people who I know through going through this process who are at various stages. Some are pilots. They're gonna fly. I mean that. So you got pilots, lawyers, chefs, combat engineers. Like there's just so many. I couldn't even summarize anything really.
Yeah. So it's as if you're walking in brand new, right?
Yeah,
As if you're
and
not a lawyer.
it's liberating
Yeah.
because the people who truly know where they're gonna go when they go to OCS are the lawyers and the pilots because they went in with like they're doing JAG or they're doing the pilot stuff. Everyone else, there's competition for there's a ranked choice thing going on. So I guess you can't know for sure what you're gonna do.
But now you're not leaning towards Jag? No?
Nope.
Do you think you'd eventually end up in that position?
So to my understanding, and I could be totally wrong, but from what I gather at this point, what I'd have to do is complete my contract. And then if I re-sign, I would be re-signing an active duty contract. And then I would go to the Naval Justice School, which is the MOS school for the lawyers, and then do it.
How
So
long
I
is this?
don't know if that's possible, but
Yeah.
that's how it would. Well, I wouldn't even say that's how it would work. I'm not sure if that's possible, but you got to go to the Naval Justice School to be a JAG for the Marine Corps, and you do that before you are a JAG.
Gotcha. And then how long is this contract? First one?
8 years.
8 years. Gotcha. So that'd be far in the future. So you got plenty of time to
Yeah.
consider and figure that out. Um, describe. So you mentioned OCS, 10 weeks or 2 6-week chunks. Is that 10 weeks where you're in that location,
Yeah.
or is that while you're continuing your civilian job? Describe
10 weeks in Quantico, Virginia.
in Virginia.
You are there.
Gotcha. And then the other courses after that, one was 6 months. You said, are
You're there.
those same thing?
You are there.
And then because of the commitment to the U.S. military, your current job, describe how that works. They hold your position, right?
Yeah. So that's exactly what they do. They hold it for you.
Legally, right?
Yeah, there are federal laws in place where
Correct.
you cannot discriminate or fire someone based on their military service. Now, of course, there are certain time frames that are in that law. So, if you go active and you're in for 20 years, they are under no obligation to hold a position for you. But in this case, the accrued time I will have is not going to hit that cutoff point. So they can't fire you for that.
Describe how it works because you're in a unique case. So you're going to be a lawyer by day and Marine by every other minute. How does that work with your commitment as a lawyer and then your commitment in the military? How do you balance the two?
I think they work hand in hand very well. So every lawyer takes an oath to uphold the Constitution, and I take it incredibly seriously. So my commitment to uphold the Constitution, ex- my desire to do that extends far beyond the confines of a courtroom or a law office. I want to do it fully, and I really can only see it working if you're doing that simultaneously.
I was curious how it works where when you're committing the time to the reserves is it once a month weekends?
Yeah, 1 weekend a month
Right.
and then 2 weeks out of the summer
Gotcha. So
for
it
drills.
shouldn't, in theory, interfere too much with court cases and
No.
your day to day job.
I have developed a system where and of course there are at the firm there are many attorneys, many support staff. I will be as attentive to each and every one of my cases as I ever, maybe even more, because I'll develop even greater organizational and leadership skill. But I see them only working to support each other, and I think that it'll the reserve level of time commitment, yeah, absolutely helps with that. I think it's a much more viable path than when you first, at least in my own personal life, when I've told people about it, they have the same reaction, like, well, how do you possibly do both? How does anyone do anything? I know that it'll be an adjustment, obviously. I'm excited to make the adjustment.
That's awesome. So, and time will tell where you end up with MOS and everything else, right? Is there any chance that it moves you from where you currently are?
Absolutely.
Physically, like
The
states and stuff.
the each MOS has a different location for I guess, one, where the school to teach you that job is, and also where they even need you to be for that job. So a lot of the pilot stuff is here in Florida because that's where a lot of the infrastructure is. So, you know, up by you, even further north, there's, I mean, we're one of the big states for that.
Yeah.
So, a lot of aviation type things over here. As far as the other stuff, right hand of God, I don't want to opine because I don't want to misspeak because I've done a lot of research. I have the MOS list that I flip through, but I want to make sure it's fully accurate before
So,
giving you the complete answer.
yeah, you'll find out soon.
Yeah.
But there is a chance that you end up in another state.
Yeah, at least for the training aspect. So for the drill, the once a month drill, I'd go wherever, and then for the 2 weeks out of the summer, it's wherever it's hosted.
Gotcha. Would you ever consider being a judge in the future?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I very rarely ever say no to things because I think perhaps the aspect of my personality that I appreciate most about myself, and it's something that I learned really from both my brother and my mom, is a a an unyielding curiosity. I find myself being truly interested in everything, and I like to explore it to everything's natural conclusion. And I think judges have an incredible role. It's an incredible job. You can impact so many people positively through your interpretation and application of law, being fair and even handed. And ultimately, you're depending on what type of judge you are and what role you're in, you're shepherding jury, making sure that the rules. You're a referee, making sure the rules are followed properly. But there's I have loved working for them, working with them. It's a unique position to be in. It's something I would love to do.
Have you considered being a professor?
100%.
Yeah.
I yes, I would love to teach anything. Wouldn't have to be in a law school. I'd love to be an art professor. I would teach whatever anyone would let me teach. Just throw me in a classroom, give me some time to come up with a curriculum and a course. I'd love to teach an English class, literature class specifically, but anything.
Well, you just answered a lot of the questions in that one bet. If you were to become a professor, what school, subject, and what school and subject would you
So I'd love to teach a J-term course at Middlebury.
to go back?
So something maybe a little prelude for people who are interested in law school. I would take the little bits of stuff that I liked the most, just give people a little bit of exposure on what to expect that first year, because at every law school in the country, your first year is dictated by a standardized, or it's a ritual. You do the foundational courses. So I'd love to do a fun, quote unquote fun but informative version of that. I truly anything. I mean, I but I'd go back to mid 100%. And if UM would have me back to teach some aspect of law, maybe a trust in the states, one of my favorite classes was with William Muir. William Muir, excellent professor. Just just when you think of that sage archetype, that's him. And he taught our trust in estates section. Just I would love to go back and do that. So I could generally professors have to do some 1L, or maybe they do all 1L, and then another type in their field. So I would love to do a 1L property because then it kind of naturally progresses into that. So if I did a 1L property, then trust in estates, that kind of thing, I'd be thrilled. And it would definitely be at UM. I love UM.
That's awesome. You mentioned you would teach literature.
I would teach it
Of course.
if given the opportunity.
Yeah. What makes you pick that too?
So I think, well, I'll step back. One of the greatest gifts given to me by educators, and shout out to Miss Talora Gross, English teacher when I was in middle. when I was in middle school. A huge gift that was given to us, everyone in that class, that I've carried forward to this day is a love of the written word, and not only reading but composing your own pieces. Why is this important? Well, our lives depend on our ability to communicate effectively. That's how you can look into my head. We can understand each other. Reading is the best way to do that because it's mind reading. It's a transmission of a thought directly to you, and I love it truly as a medium. It's it is the best. Honestly, I know that we painting to me the best, but the best maybe objectively is the written word and being an author and writing books because you are unfettered. You have your only limitation is your command of whatever language you're writing in. I mean,
You are the limitation.
yes. So think about making a studio film. You have to have millions of dollars and actors, and they gotta. But you can do the same thing with a book, and you could do it with a pen, and it doesn't even it doesn't even have to be lined paper. It could be scraps that you find. It is the pinnacle, and to do it well is extraordinarily difficult. Just think about the tomes and tomes and reams of paper that books written that no one has read. I mean, to do that well is otherworldly. And if I had the opportunity to teach a literature course, it would obviously be steeped in my own taste, but I would hope that the true takeaway is not me quizzing you and testing you on some arcane aspect of something in the text. You know, that's part of it. It teaches you to read carefully. But what I really want is a way to show that interacting with this material feeds the soul. You know, you really get an opportunity to understand others and to live something when you read about it.
You wrote a book.
I did.
Tell me about it.
It is it is for an audience of one. I wrote it at a time in my life when I didn't have access to a studio or any way to paint or make anything else. So I decided I got to still make something. So I thought I'd give that a shot. And I personally love the book.
Let them know about it.
It's called Neon Orange Assisted Suicide. You can find it on Amazon. Self-published it. Tried the traditional route to get an editor and all that kind of it didn't work out. It's super difficult to go that traditional route and find a public publishing house these days. I am not done. I'm still fighting to have that happen, but maybe it's not going to be with that one. I have another manuscript I've been working on,
Good. I didn't know
but
that.
I'm constantly chipping away at it. It's a little bit more. It's a much more straightforward story.
Cool.
The one that I've already published is truly an experiment. I was heavily inspired by, and please, I'm begging you, don't cringe when I say this because I know kind of the reputation it's built. Infinite Jest. I love David Foster Wallace's work. He's kind of become a meme in certain circles, and it's like, I don't want to say a red flag, but it says a lot about someone's literary taste when they're like going in with David Foster Wallace. But even me saying that I've read Infinite Jest is like, I accept the fact that I'm gonna get clowned on because it's so much of like a thing. Anyway, I was inspired by the fact that that book is structured. The structure and physically how you read it informs the story. So, a central theme and a central motif is the game of tennis. Uh, a lot of things in this book happen around the Enfield Tennis Academy. And the book is famous for having 300 pages of footnotes. And the footnotes are critical to understand what's going on in the narrative. And the footnotes are interjected all over the place. So when you read, you have 3 bookmarks. You have one bookmark on the one page of the book where David Foster Wallace lays out the timeline, because in this future world, the government has sold years to companies to make additional revenue. So like you have the year of Glad, like Glad plastic bags. They sold that year to them and they call it the year of Glad. So like you want to see which of these eras you're in. So you have one bookmark there. Then you have a bookmark for where you are in the story. And then you have a bookmark for where you are in the footnotes. And as you're flipping back and forth between the story and the footnotes, you're like, oh my God, I'm flipping back and forth. It's like a tennis ball going across the court. So I really liked how the physical act of reading it, and like you had to engage with the text in that way, and it also kind of had the feel of what was going on in the story. So in my I don't want to spoil how it works, but my
Sure.
book works similarly, not with the footnote thing, but with the narrative structure, because of what happens. Like you kind of see how they match, and then when you reread the book, you'll see how the different through lines kind of come and connect in the middle, and they do that for a very specific reason. So that is kind of what got me excited about writing. I wanted to do an experiment and do something that way that has a structure outside of the words themselves. But I will fully admit, because it was intellectual exercise, it is difficult to read. It pains me to say it because I would love for people to read it, and I'd love to
Share it.
yeah, but I was in a different headspace, so I just made it hard on purpose, which is kind of lame. It's it's lame because it's not fun if the game is too hard, because then you don't want to play,
Yeah.
and that's the flaw, the biggest flaw in that book. It's too just using weird words and shit, and like having it kind of. I promise there's a story in there, and I like the story, but I learned a lot doing it. I suggest everyone put pen to paper. Try a 10 pager. Do a short story. Like tell a complete beginning, middle, and end. Just it's fun. It really is. And then see where it goes from there.
Well, that was the best segue I could have come up with because I did not tell you beforehand. You started asking me questions and I tried to avoid it. Um, the people listening, I take all my notes in Field Notes, and they're a company I really want to support. I would love to work with them in the future. They make everything in the US, I believe in Chicago, and they're really cool. And I write a lot. I've written every week, and I try to physically write more than I'm on my phone. I write a lot on my phone too. Um, so what I do, I did not tell you beforehand. I give every guest their own field notes,
Oh wow.
and this one's pretty cool. They come in 3 packs. They teamed up with Hatch Show Print Company out of Nashville, Tennessee. They're an extremely old. I think they're over 100 years old. So this was a real poster that they used for the screen printing, and they're cool. They come in different sizes, as you can see. The small ones are cool. I give them to every guest, and they fit in your pocket.
Wow.
And
Thank you very much, Tom.
of
This
course,
is perfect.
they're pretty sweet. I tear through them. I think I showed you. I think I have 6 of these
Yes.
with me. So I wanted to give that to you.
In the event of misplacement, if found, please contact the email. Hence, there is or isn't a handsome reward. Wait, this is very cute.
You get to put that in.
Yeah, no,
I read a
I
message.
just really like that.
The back's even better.
The,
All sorts of stuff. They put in measurements, fun facts.
Huh.
I address each one to each guest, but I let you put in if there's a handsome reward, and if you want to use an alias or not, that's up to you.
Wow. Thank you,
Pretty
Tom.
cool, of course. So the mantra of the project, the podcast, is the greatest lesson my dad's ever taught me, in my opinion. And it's his quote of never waste a mistake. And it's poetic and it means a lot to me because it's never waste your mistake. It could have been anyone's mistake. It could have been yours, mine, a friend, colleague, anyone else. So the final question to every episode is what is one mistake you haven't wasted?
Fucking up the MCAT.
The MCAT.
I fucked it royally. Like I went into it with every confidence. I thought I was going. I thought my life would be one way, and when it didn't work, and I had to when I faced that humongous stumbling block that caused a pivot that has since, that initial pivot turned into a ripple that has become a wave, and I wouldn't trade the life I have now for anything else. And what what I viewed as the most colossal misstep has become something more fruitful than I truly could have imagined. So that to me feels like a mistake that has gone unwasted.
It's awesome. Wisdom for people pursuing the medical field, right?
Yeah.
Jay, lawyer, future Marine. You're the best.
Thank you, sir.
See you again.
It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate it.